It's April 2nd, 2019, and yesterday was April Fool's Day, and there was a lot of technology April Fool's nonsense, which we'll probably cover next week.
Part of the April Fool is that today's April 2nd. And Chris is not here,
She's missing.
which is also an April Fool's joke
No email.
on us. So, we'll soldier on without her. She hates to miss government news because
Actually, this week's news is a lot of fun because it's the first week in a long time where a lot of the news is interrelated. A lot of the whole, like, left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and, you know, left shoe when the shoe's on the other foot. A lot of that.
generally for government news, which is what we're going into, I follow a strict timeline. You start out with federal U.S. news because the U.S. is number one. Then you bleed into state level news. Then you go EU, and then China, Russia. You ended up with Australia if you have to, if something comes out of Australia.
Australia doesn't even count. Australia is like the grand experiment of the capitalists.
Dead last. This week we will change that because of the severity. And it's not surprising, but here it is. It's happened.
The copyright law that threatens the internet as we know it has passed a final EU vote, as we predicted. It was Article 13 and the link tax, although Article 13 is now Article 17. They renamed. So, like, there was an insane amount of shenanigans that went into the lead up to this vote. There were a lot of people that were saying, well, we could probably pass this. It's the right idea for some things, but we need to refine the language here, there, and yonder. And they did actually refine the language to say that best efforts could be used for content filtering, but it still puts into place that content is filtered before it's uploaded instead of the whole takedown request that the EU currently has, which is really similar to what we have in America, the DMCA.
The other problem, and I question that this happened how they thought, but I think what really happened here is somebody got in their ear or in their pocket and said, you'll vote this way and you'll get this. They did vote that way. And then later they went back and they were like, oh, wait, I didn't understand.
MEPs accidentally vote the wrong way on copyright law. This is kind of important because just 5 votes is all that was necessary to actually add some critical amendments to that law in the EU, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen, and these MEPs were like, "Oh, we didn't mean to vote that way," and it is because they changed the order at the last minute, but they didn't read. Like, are people that, like, is it that terrible? It seems like a terrible.
Not people, politicians.
The lowest form of pond scum.
So they went back and they wanted some kind of resolution to say, no, we want it clear in the record that we didn't mean to do this. But once you've cast a vote, there's no takebacks.
Well, there is a thing, but it can't change the outcome. Like, you can be like, oops, I voted the wrong way. And it's cool. It'll record you having voted the other way, but it doesn't change the outcome.
That's what I'm saying. So,
Well, not just a footnote. Just like, yeah, we're going to change it, but it doesn't actually change it.
but what I'm saying is they can, when people call them up furious, they'll be like, no, note the record. I changed it, but it doesn't actually change it.
Yeah,
So that's a stupid rule.
it is a really stupid rule.
And they should do away with it. So this means, hopefully, the best case scenario here is we just cut that undersea cable.
Well, see, there's a more interesting thing happening with this in France, actually. France was like, a lot of French politicians were like super going to support this. And the proponents in France were saying that the, copyright filters are not a thing. We're not going to do that. And that was like the number one criticism. But immediately after this passed, France is like, hey, we got some draft legislation here that includes copyright filters. And that's the same people, the same politicians that were saying, no, copyright filters is not what we're talking about here. And yet, now they're on the record as having said, no, yeah, copyright filters are all about this. So, the most duplicitous display of human corruption ever. It's crazy. Thanks, France.
But now back to our regularly scheduled flow of news.
That must mean Ajit Pai, right?
You said the most duplicitous, but is it? Is there not a heated competition between these two entities?
Ajit Pai wants to cap spending on broadband for poor people and rural areas. Now, don't worry, that cap is far beyond what is currently being spent, but that is small consolation to people in poor parts of America that just don't have infrastructure.
but they're paying for it.
But they're paying for it.
Everybody's paying for it.
It's easy. Like, so if you're in the city and you're in an apartment building, if your neighbors have internet, the cost for you to also have internet is literally pennies. But if you're in rural America and you have internet and your neighbors want internet, it might be thousands of dollars to run a line. Now, never mind that those companies have already been paid to run that line at least 4 or 5 different times over the last 20 or 25 years. And that line has never been run. It is sort of a thing that makes sense that you would tax. I mean, it's what we did with our telephone service. We taxed telephone service in the cities where it doesn't cost as much to pay for vastly more expensive telephone service in the rural parts of America. That kind of makes sense on some level. But the implementation has just been so botched that it's frustrating.
I think it'd be way better, though, as things usually are, if they had just kept their nose out of it, not taken the taxes that they never paid toward it, not charged the fees that never went toward anything, and just let rural people pay for their own shit.
Yeah, that seemed to work out really well in Vermont.
We'd be better off.
That's a lot of some rural places. They were like, let's just get a donkey and run our own line, and that actually worked.
You could use a truck. You don't have to go back to.
Well, it was more advantageous to have, like, that was the whole point, is like you couldn't get a truck in there, but a donkey was fine, so they ran fiber that way. And it was, I mean, that's a rural folk solution to a problem, but, you know, to your argument, it's right. It was less expensive than, you know, making a road and putting a truck through.
We've been talking for 3 or 4 weeks, well, longer than that, but for the last 3 or 4 weeks, robocalls have been in the news in the sense that people are really fed up and we're saying we have to do something. And amazingly, it seems like the FTC, the T being the operative letter there, actually has done something.
The FTC has shut down 4 groups responsible for billions of illegal robocalls. Now, when you dig into this, they figured out that it's just a couple of people that are ultimately responsible for this, that are pulling the strings, the puppet masters, if you will. And they have been fined millions of dollars unless they can show that they're dirt poor, and then they just have to turn over assets. So like one guy was running a fake charity, which was like cars for veterans. And it was like, hey, donate your car to a veteran, get a tax write-off. And the guy was just collecting cars. So the FTC's like, you give us the 88 cars that you've collected. Yeah, 88 cars, I guess this guy's collected. Then we will just make the fine go away. Otherwise, it's like $500,000.
The FCC has also been working hard against robocallers. And actually, a lot of fines have been levied. Yes. A lot of them. And you think, wow, they've
Millions
actually,
of dollars of fines.
They've been doing a lot of things, but there's a small problem. A large problem resulting in a small result.
The FCC has reportedly collected only 0.003% of robocall fines since 2015. So the FCC has said, robocallers, you guys need to stop, cool it, tone it down. They haven't. They've levied fines, but they haven't collected those fines.
It was hundreds of millions, and they collected 6,000 or 7,000, something like that. So you got to feel stupid if you're that one robocaller place that actually paid the fine.
The FTC actually said one of the places that they had issued a fine against, they literally didn't have any money, and so the FTC was just like, all right, well, how much money do you have, and just shut down. And it was like $88,000 or something, and the FTC was like, all right, we'll take that for your fine, just shut down. And they did, which seems pragmatic, I guess. But some of those fines on the FTC side were levied against the individuals, which I think is really what's necessary to stop that.
It should be criminal. That's what's necessary to stop it. With serious consequences.
It seems like it.
You should have to go to the same wing of the federal prison as the child molesters.
Get one of the gang guys is like, what are you in for? Robocalling, and they just beat the crap out of you.
Yeah,
you'll have to like be in solitary for your own safety.
You get the gang dropout designation, even though you've never been in a gang, and then they'll take care of the problem for us. And we'll switch back to the FTC, which once again is doing something that seems like it should be the job of Mr. Ajit Pai, but because he's doing nothing, they step in.
The FTC has told ISPs to disclose exactly what information they collect on users and what it's for. So Ajit Pai has said, hey, this is the FTC's job in a lot of public speeches. So the FTC's like, okay, we'll give it a go. This seems reasonable. But it wants the ISPs to disclose what's going on, because there have been some cases maybe with like Verizon is used as the example here, where it's like Verizon doesn't collect your data or do anything, but Verizon Holding Co. or whatever would collect and analyze your data. And so the FTC would be like, that's misleading and deceptive trade practices, if that's what's going on. It's not clear that that's what's happening because the language is so obtuse.
Here's a list. It's pretty comprehensive, all of the things they want. And this is not going to be cheap for, I mean, they're already doing it, but to process it and try to hide the fact that they're doing it is going to be really expensive to ISPs. I expect them to buck pretty hard against this one.
You know what would be even cheaper for ISPs? Don't mine your customers' data.
No, that would be super expensive because that's a huge revenue source.
Yeah.
You got to think in terms of the cost of being fined for it is almost always lower than the cost of not doing it, which is the problem with regulatory agencies. Remember those voting machines that we talked about? Or is it Switzerland?
Oh, yeah, Switzerland's like, let's put it on the internet and see what happens. What could possibly go wrong?
And they found some issues, but one thing about it was somewhat open source and people got to look through it, and that was kind of a good thing. Our voting machines that we use are not only closed source, but they'll sue you a lot. And if you buy a used one, they'll come after you. But even then, even with that much lockdown, we've seen inside them, and it's terrifying. And finally, somehow, after decades, lawmakers are catching on.
Senators demand to know why election vendors are still selling voting machines with known vulnerabilities. Now, the list of senators is in the article, and I had to take note that all of the senators' designations began with D. There wasn't a single R in the list.
Yeah, it does seem like controlling the vote via the machines is more of a right-wing thing. We know that, well, we don't know it, but let me say, I'll speak for myself. I strongly suspect the Bush presidency resulted from those things.
Well, the Democrats are adapting, and maybe if we can get Beto in there and he can, do his magical hacking stuff, they can take over.
That, I would rather have, let's see, what supervillain?
You're going to get Lex Luthor if you're not careful. Oh, foreshadowing.
I would be so much happier to have Bezos in there.
After the article that's coming up in the business section, well, I don't know if it's in business or government, but whenever that article comes up, I'm going to be, that article is going to make the news for me this week because there's just so much to that.
I think I don't buy into the whole orange man bad stuff, but I do find it very embarrassing how Putin manipulates Trump. That's
because it's so obvious.
Yes, as an American, I'm like, oh, it's a bad look for us. I think Bezos would give him a run for his money.
Yeah,
that would be a real clash of minds to go against one another. And another D that you want to talk about doing something that's possibly good is Miss Pocahontas herself.
Elizabeth Warren calls for a national right to repair law for tractors. So I don't think this goes far enough, but she's just like, people ought to be able to repair their own tractors. And it's like, you think so, Miss Warren? You think? Yeah,
we talked about John Deere has the firmware. And if you open the tractor up in a certain way and try to fix things, that firmware has to be satisfied before the tractor will run again. And you can't do that yourself. It's something they do with their own thing.
The tractor literally sabotages itself.
There's that, was it a Ukrainian hacker or Czechoslovakian or something like that, who's found a way around it. And they're probably trying to kill him right now.
A country known for ingenuity.
But other than that, you're pretty much screwed if you want to fix your own tractor. And so she's saying, not only should that be removed, that's the obvious one, but also you should have documentation and parts and stuff like that, just like with cars.
I think those guys that hack the tractor, if they want to move here, we should have the red carpet waiting and H-1B visas and everything. It's like you go to town, you just keep hacking those tractors for us. It'll be, maybe the farmer lobby could make that happen.
Maybe USDA.
Everybody needs tractors.
Well, the people who need tractors are hugely expensive, and they last a long time. So, of course, John Deere is probably working diligently to make sure that's not the case. Now, we've heard about the good things that the D's have done. How about one for the R's? Who among you, who are American, of course, expect to go back to the moon? I'll raise my hand. I think it's time. Let's get back up there. We need a bigger flag. We need to erect a flag on the moon that can be seen from the Earth.
I would. We should use lasers to just carve the flag into the surface of the moon.
How about explosives?
That would be good.
That would be more of an event.
We already
on the
planned
4th
for
of July. 4th of July, 2022, we blow up a huge chunk of the moon.
I would be on board for that.
That would be fantastic.
We literally already put a plan together for that as Americans.
So he has not suggested, but decreed a return to the moon.
Mike Pence tells NASA to accelerate human missions to the moon by any means necessary. NASA had an immediate retort, okay, cut us a check, we're ready.
They're working on their own rocket. So they're talking about, hey, NASA, you take too long to build rockets. Look at all these other guys that are building rockets. Just strap one of those onto your shuttle. Let's get it up there.
I don't think the shuttle was designed to go to the moon.
Doesn't matter. Modify it. Put a spoiler on it.
It still runs like an 8086.
So the idea here, well, what NASA wants to do is they want to build that moon base, the orbiting moon base. But Pence seems to just be saying, right, whatever. Just do it now. People on the moon now. And the reality that it takes years, if not decades, seems to be lost on him.
Well, we did it once in 69. Don't we have all that stuff just in storage somewhere? We could haul that stuff out again.
You know what? I think that was a single use, most of that stuff, unfortunately.
Well, maybe we could borrow Musk's reuse rockets and apply some of that technology. No.
Now, some of you, based on the YouTube comments, I would say very few of you would ever qualify for a space mission. I'm sorry, but you're thinking to yourself, I want to contribute. I want to get our boys to the moon. I'm just not very motivated, not very smart. Is there anything I could do? And NASA says, yes, there is.
NASA is going to pay you $19,000 to stay in bed for 2 months. But it sounds like a miserable experience. You will wash, shower, eat, and do everything in bed. And you're going to lose muscle mass. It's going to take 2 weeks of rehab.
I don't think you'll be showering.
No. It literally says in the article that you'll be bathing in bed.
But that won't be a shower.
Well, yeah.
You'll be whore bathing.
Yeah.
From a little nightstand while you like. So yeah, the idea is they want to test whether or not artificial gravity. So like one test group is going to be in a big centrifuge being spun the whole time to try to keep the blood moving and stuff and see if that's any better than not having that. If you're in the not group, you're definitely losing that muscle mass.
Yeah.
But if it works, maybe you're in the other group, but you will spend 2 months pooping in bed.
They also said something about the meals will not be the healthiest.
Well, they got to simulate probably like all freeze-dried stuff. Probably very carby.
Interesting. If you guys volunteer for that, let us know how it goes. Maybe take a GoPro. Maybe we can turn it into a video for level 1.
I'm sure that you will bring no electronics.
NASA would frown upon that.
And you will be constantly monitored. You're also going to be in a big dormitory room, open room. So you have zero privacy as you poop in your bed.
Well, that makes sense. Did you see the transcripts from Apollo 13? There was a floating poop at one point, and that was recorded on the NASA transcripts because all the astronauts were trying to figure out whose it was.
That's probably a moment of levity. Otherwise, tense mission. Why not? Qualcomm versus Apple. Every week, there's a tiny new bit of information, and it's the crazy thing about these court battles is you'll get the big headline, and you're like, wow, this changes everything. And then there's such a string of appeals, and everything takes so long, you never hear about it again. And you wonder what happened. And I think that's probably going to be what happens here.
Judge recommends import ban on iPhones after the latest Apple versus Qualcomm verdict. So Apple's not doing well in court, and Qualcomm is going for the jugular here, I guess. It's only on certain models, though.
Well, they agreed that Qualcomm did have patents on certain parts of the modem. So the ruling is the Intel replacements that use that same technology should be banned, and only the Qualcomm versions should be imported. I don't even think they're using Qualcomm on the current one, are they?
No.
So
because of this little spat.
That would be a problem. They would have to go back to using Qualcomm, and that would be a huge loss.
I read not in the Verge article, but in a different Qualcomm article that for some reason the very latest Intel version is exempted. But that might have been an earlier ruling that was a different patent. I'm honestly not sure. All the journalism around this is very spotty. So it's hard to know what's actually happening.
Nothing is happening. It's just you get these crazy rulings, and then It never actually happens.
It's like those old high school fights between cheerleaders where they're just like slapping each other and something happened, but it turns out it was like over a makeup or a comb or something.
I wonder if we'll ever see. I think probably either Apple or Qualcomm will go out of business for other reasons before this is ever settled.
That's a long time away. Apple could run on no income for decades.
Yeah, but that's not how it'll go. They'll make a lot of bad decisions and try to invest in the wrong things. That'll be the widening gyre when Apple goes out. They'll go out slowly at first and then all at once. That's a quote from Hemingway about going broke and getting alcoholism.
A little bit at first, then all at once.
Yeah. So remember the copyright troll who uploaded porn that he made to torrent?
Pirate. There was a Pirate Bay too later.
And then trolled the IPs that downloaded it. Well, his time is up.
The U.S. wants the copyright troll lawyer in prison for 12.5 years. So this is like the whole Prenda law thing. Remember that? That whole thing has been happening for like the last decade. Well, it turns out that there was one guy that was the mastermind behind this. There were some other attorneys that were involved. And there were these shell companies, like these offshore companies that made it hard to trace ownership. And the guy's brother was involved because he's the one who actually uploaded it to the Pirate Bay. Yeah, because of the extent and pervasiveness of the subterfuge and dishonesty here. And it was, an actual lawyer, like the scummiest lawyer that you could possibly imagine, I guess. 12 and a half years in prison. Doesn't seem like enough.
Yeah. He went after individuals and he was only asking for $3,000. That's probably like the magic number because some people could cough that up and just be happy to not go to jail or whatever. He made a lot of money.
A lot of money embarrassing people.
And so, yeah, it was porn. So, it's another layer of it.
It was never actually distributed commercially, so there can't possibly be commercial damages.
He made some of it.
Yeah.
He shot porn.
For the purpose of... Yeah. That seems like some kind of fraud to me.
Can you imagine the lifestyle he was living? Like going to porn shoots and extorting people. There had to be...
Living the American dream.
There had to be cocaine involved. Remember IBM laying off a bunch of people, and oddly enough, a lot of those people were old. Well, they've been called out on it.
IBM has been formally accused of violating federal anti-age discrimination law. A group of ex-employees filed a lawsuit that accuses the tech giant of failing to comply with the law requiring companies to disclose the ages of people over 40 who have been laid off. So this is just the next chapter. We've reported on this at basically every step of the way. This is just the next chapter. This is not good because... the last time we reported on this, we figured that IBM had gone to great lengths to really dot their I's and cross their T's on this. This article indicates that no, in fact, they did not.
Well, they kind of did. So they have an agreement when you take your severance, you get a month's pay or something like that. And to get that month's pay, you have to agree not to sue them for firing you. So almost all these people did that. Now, this lawsuit is asking that be set aside because it was age discrimination, and that's illegal. So, yes, we've signed away our rights, but we were discriminated against, so we should still get to sue. This lawsuit decides, can they do that as a class action?
I hope a prosecutor takes that up, because that's going to be interesting.
I don't know how I feel about age discrimination. I mean, I'm sure that that's what IBM is doing, but... is that something that we should be guaranteed to be protected against? I mean, because in a lot of ways, if you were a construction worker, for example, could you be protected by the same thing? I mean, you lose the ability to do the job at some point.
Oh, I was thinking about it from the other side. It's like, you're an old person and you're used to getting a certain amount of salary and a certain set of benefits and things like that. It's like, hey, the advance of technology means that we can get this done cheaper now there's more automated systems to look over the younglings who are going to make a lot of terrible mistakes. So we don't really need this level of performance anymore. Do you want a job where you're basically working alongside them for the same money? Because it's going to be a dramatic pay cut. If you want to do that, it's fine. But I think most people will be real salty about that.
But they probably have... No, you can't do that because you're getting the best of both worlds here. You're keeping the carrot because the young people who are replacing the old people see the possibility of all those pay raises and benefits packages when they get there. If If you take that away,
That's never coming.
you lose the motivation.
The carrot was never there.
Yeah. So that's probably a bad thing. But to say that we have to employ old people, even if we're not happy with their performance,
Yeah, that's rough.
it's a difficult, you'd have to look at it case by case. And when you look at the numbers here, I think I kind of lead toward they weren't looking at it case by case. They were just wiping out the older guys.
I think also a lot of it is that companies like IBM get in this situation where, you've got a worker that's really good at doing X. And so IBM is really good at extracting the maximum amount of hours possible for them to do X. But technology moves and changes so rapidly. Could you make the argument that IBM should train them to do Y so that they can adapt their skill set? Because what happens is they get 20 years in and then that technology is no longer needed. So they literally don't need that skill anymore. They need them to be able to do something else. And they're perfectly capable of doing that something else if they had been trained on it or had experience doing it or whatever, but there just simply wasn't time to do that during work hours.
But also, the other younger person already knows how to do that.
Yes.
And they're working for a third of the salary.
Yep.
So you're never going to be able to convince a major corporation to not do what is obviously the moneymaker.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out. We'll let the courts decide.
It ultimately comes down to, do you need that institutional knowledge or is it just purely technical knowledge? And what are you willing to pay for that institutional knowledge?
I accidentally put the IBM story in amongst the Apple block.
They're more similar than most people want to. They're the same company at different points in their timeline.
But we do have quite a bit of Apple. Apple made several announcements. Of course, that's coming in business. But on the government side of things, we have to look at right to repair. It's not just about tractors.
Internal documents show that Apple is capable of implementing right to repair legislation. A leaked document obtained by Motherboard outlines a program that looks almost exactly like the requirements to the right to repair legislation that has been proposed in 20 states. So, long story short, how Apple had that battery replacement program? That was an experiment. So, Tim Cook was looking at the writing on the wall of, can people actually use and repair and replace their Apple devices and get more life out of them than we really designed them for? And so many people replaced the battery on the iPhone. The answer was overwhelmingly yes. So they have the internal documentation to do all the repair stuff. But from that data, they crunched the numbers and said, if you couldn't get your phone repaired, we would stand to make a lot more money, even though we're charging exorbitant fees to get your phone repaired.
Well, I think this is more about they have the plan in case it happens. So if these laws go through, they're already prepared to do the minimum. And they've already got that set up. So they have the part system. They have the documentation. They're ready to ship that out to the third-party repairers rather than face some legal consequence. But they're not doing it, even though they have it, even though it's ready. They're not giving it to us until they are forced by the government.
Because of their experiences with the whole, it'll eat their bottom line. They literally put that in their financial statement to their investors. That was like, yeah, it's good for us if people can't repair their stuff.
We've talked a lot about national security, especially where China is concerned. And we've talked about our infrastructure, our IT infrastructure, our phones, of course. Phones are a big one.
We're worried about the whole, it's like Huawei networking equipment on our network.
The airplane jet engines, some of the Navy stuff, and it's everywhere. But I bet you didn't think it was in our gay hookups.
The U.S. government has declared Grindr a national security risk, according to Fortune. Yeah, that is a Grindr. I don't think it's unfair to characterize Grindr as a gay hookup app.
What is this logo? Is that their real logo?
I don't know.
I don't get that.
Apparently this app was owned by the Chinese, and that was kind of surprising.
They bought. I don't think they started it, but they bought a big part of it.
And now they put it up for sale as a result of this report.
Yeah.
According to this article.
So
it's like, oops, you caught us. This is very surprising considering how conservative China is.
But it makes sense because if you are China and you want, because as liberal as America is becoming, at least in some corporate parts and government parts of society, pretending not to be gay is still a big thing, I think, right? So if China can find proof that you're hooking up on Grindr and you're a senator, for example, they could.
That's leverage.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of true, although you wouldn't think so when you first look at it.
It is crazy that that's the world that we live in now.
Yeah. I mean, we're more willing to, because I don't think there are too many people. There's some people with rose-colored glasses, but most people you talk to, they are completely on board. It's like, yeah, but politicians are just a pack of liars. And they'll go ahead and vote, and they'll play that dog and pony show. It's like, okay, we realize that they're just lying, and we're going to buy into it, and we're going to vote, and we're going to have these elections. But do not tell me they're gay. No, sir. That is unacceptable. I will vote for anything but that. So,
and if it turns out that they are, they get suspended or in trouble for things or whatever.
Well, they just won't get elected. I mean, it's not illegal. I'm sure we do have some gay senators.
No, I'm just thinking about the whole, like, the text message scandals. There have been 2 or 3 text message scandals, and it's like where, you know, like the adult intern comes on to the senator, and then that turns into like a big deal.
Anthony Weiner was the big one.
Yeah. I don't know if the adults were involved in that one. That one, the fact that adults were maybe not involved in that one is maybe what got him in trouble.
No, it was a young girl.
I thought, yeah, she was underage, though, wasn't she?
I don't know if she was underage at the time. She might have been. But she was much younger than him. And, you know, he was a married man with children. Have you ever... Well, I know the answer for the two of us is no.
No.
And probably most of the audience has never taken their PC into OfficeMax or Office Depot or whatever to have it fixed. But if you have family members that do, you should show them this story.
Office Depot and OfficeMax and Support.com are going to cough up $35 million after charging folks millions in fake malware cleanup fees. So if you think your computer is running slow or weird or whatever and you brought it in, every time, yep, malware. Yep, spyware. And... you know, depending on what you classify as spyware, parts of the Windows operating system are probably spyware. So,
well, that's not. They didn't get that even that much of a gray area. They had a little GUI in their support software
they just always said malware.
and there was a global variables. It's like, do you want us to always say there's malware? Yes, no.
Yes.
And they would click yes, and they would run it and be like, oh, right here, you need rust proofing. And then people would pay, and they made a lot of money, so they're going to have to pay it back.
And yet there's a lot of stuff that car dealerships do, like rust proofing, that's always just...
Yeah. Pretty much, you know, two sides of the same coin there, right?
Yeah.
PC repair and
That's a
car
magic
repair.
black box. Make my magic black box fix. It's like, okay, sounds good.
The swatter. Perhaps the world's most famous swatter, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, because people died.
Yeah, well, one man died. And
Well, let's take a second, though. Let's not blame the swatter solely for the death, because the police force should not be militarized to the point that there's any chance of randomly shooting
Yeah.
people.
they refused,
come on.
They refused to bring charges against the cop, which is ridiculous. Because that... And, you know, I'm sure we've said this before talking about this story, but the argument was the cop thought for a millisecond that this guy might have been reaching for a gun. Might have been reaching for a gun. Is it not your job as a cop to deal with some people that might be reaching for a gun? You get paid to be a bullet shield.
Shouldn't somebody, in a traffic stop, if you've done a traffic stop with a crazy person, they might be reaching for a gun. What's to stop somebody from getting shot in a traffic stop?
Nothing. And that's your job. That's your usefulness. Although if you watch that police activity YouTube channel, it's amazing how many people just start shooting at traffic stops. I mean, I get why they're so, you know, hesitant. But hey, you know what? Do something else for a living. The fire department needs people. People won't shoot at you if you're a fireman, I'd say, for the most part. Anyway, that guy is a terrible piece of shit, and he's been convicted, but he had not been sentenced until now.
California man has been sentenced to 20 years in deadly Kansas swatting. Everybody was expecting about 12. He got 20.
The defense wanted 12. 20 is, I think it seems light. Because wasn't he fairly young?
Yes.
He was like not even 20, right?
Yeah.
So he'll get out and he'll be 30 something because he won't do 20. Oh, it's federal crime, so you do 80%, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he'll get out at 40 and a little under 40 and still have some life to live. I don't think he should.
It seems that he was very egregious But I don't know if he has any contrition. Like, is he just? I don't. It's hard for me to believe that, having done it so many times, that he genuinely did not understand the gravity of what he was doing.
Oh, he knew exactly what he was doing.
So,
and he was proud of it. And he boasted about it.
yeah.
So I think all that should factor in. But we'll see. Yeah. I don't think he'll have an easy time in prison.
No.
He was a very slight man, and had one of those faces that just makes you not like him. He's probably going to be washing somebody's underwear. The Intercept, I think they have great stock photos. Or not stock photos, they probably make these. But this is another fantastic one.
The Intercept, we're talking, it's like Google, there's a little dragonfly on there. Oh my gosh.
And there's a light shining on it.
Google is conducting a secret performance review of its censored China project. Now, you may be thinking, wait a minute, didn't senior Google executives say that they put that project on hold publicly? Why, yes, they did. Yes, they did.
I love that Google has done such a good job setting up its code review and version control and all that stuff. Like, they have this amazing system.
It's so transparent.
And now the one time that they're like, we must be sneaky.
They can't
beat it because it's such a good system. They're probably just cursing themselves. So yeah, when you do a product review at Google, it's obvious that that's what's happening. A lot of people have, now these people are still locked out. They can't go in and look at the code, but they could see that things change.
and see that there's activity.
And so it's being reviewed. Why would you review a program that's been mothballed? That seems like a waste of resources.
Maybe there are employees working directly on this in China. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, this is, you think maybe the sunlight is the best disinfectant, and whoever like built that was like, no, we must never become evil. Do no evil is literally our mantra. So internally, everybody should be able to see what's going on so that you have that champion of sunlight so that, you know, no terribleness can ever come into the company. And then we have this.
So I guess it goes to show you that if you are starting up a company that is skyrocketing toward evil corporatism, you can build the infrastructure in such a way that will hamstring later evil.
There's going to be a future company that is as successful and large as Google that is run primarily by AI, and somebody's going to build these kind of directives into the AI, and it's going to be amazing until like the next guy does the same thing with AI but tells the AI to be as evil as possible. That AI will win.
That AI will turn on its master.
Yeah.
Because it will quickly work out that it will have to take him out of the picture in order to be truly the supreme ruler. That'd be a good movie. Speaking of despotism, China. We always talk about weird things that you're not allowed to do in China. Of course, we know you're not allowed to talk about Tiananmen Square. That one makes sense. But then on the other side of the spectrum, Winnie the Pooh, which makes no sense. Or you can't eat bananas on live streams. You know, just it gets crazy. And this one is maybe a little further on that side of the spectrum.
Mac users in China can no longer use the Taiwan flag emoji because talking about Taiwan as an independent country and not a territory is verboten. And this is something that Apple had to cooperate with China on.
Yeah, they had the...
we see you, Apple.
They just sliced out the emoji for Apple, but they forgot some of the other functions that try to, you know, incorporate that. And so that was... you could brick a phone temporarily just by sending the Taiwanese flag. So presumably this latest iOS update is... it's fixed all that, and it's just gone. And here's the crazy thing about it. If you have a Chinese iPhone, but you travel to the U.S., for example, and change the country, you still can't get your Taiwanese flag.
Yeah, because it came from China.
Right.
It's like the Nokia thing, I suspect. You know how the Nokia phones we talked about a couple of weeks ago had the firmware that was just always reporting to China no matter where you were? Probably the same thing is with the Apple OS. So it's maybe not fair that Apple gets a pass, whereas Google gets such scrutiny. Because having that level of control in your operating system is very worrisome.
And being able to force companies that aren't even in your country to do those things.
Well, they want to be there, though.
Well, but what about a company that not only wants to be there, but is clearly under some control of the Chinese government? Should we be suspicious of them?
I don't know. We've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, and Huawei's equipment poses significant security risks, but the UK is starting to agree with the US. And this is evidence-based, apparently, because the UK did some analysis of the hardware. Now, in the stories that we've covered in the past, the analysis could be chalked up to simple incompetence or gross incompetence. Like, dangerously insecure, I think would be a good way to describe some of the flaws that have been encountered. This UK report seems to suggest that some of the flaws are not explainable by simple incompetence.
Or that they've been known for so long and haven't been fixed, it raises questions. Like, why would you not be dealing with this? But
like our voting machines?
well, that's a good point. But every time we talk about this, we also have to bring up Cisco, who was fixing backdoors that had been around since 2012, earlier this year.
And Juniper. The OPM hack was Juniper, which was ultimately the elliptic curve thing, which was ultimately our own intelligence service. Everything is related to everything else.
And yes, China's spying, but so is everybody else. But are we not within our rights to say, we don't want your spying, we want our spying? I don't know. It's complex. And speaking of spying, what about the spying that the people say yes to and beg for because they are infantilized to the nth degree by this modern world?
I knew this news story was really going to piss you off. From the BBC, road safety. The UK is set to adopt vehicle speed limiters by 2022. The vehicles will have a mandated safety device where there's a camera and GPS, and it will not allow you to speed. The car will physically not allow you to go faster than the posted speed limit.
Here's the thing about it. It sounds crazy, and it is, but you can turn it off. But if you turn it off and there's an accident, are they going to nail your ass to the wall?
Yeah.
And your insurance company is probably going to, drop you, and terrible things are going to happen.
Maybe not even pay.
Maybe.
Insurance companies are good at finding reasons not to pay.
Boy, I'll tell you what. Of course, this is in the UK, but if they were to do that here, talk about the value of existing cars going through the roof. Pre-nanny cars, that would be a big market.
Well, the whole time I was reading this story, I was thinking that it's like the UK wants to exit the EU to set their own we're going to set our own course. We're going to make our own decisions. And they have trouble deciding how they're going to exit.
But they mentioned the UK was going to do this as well.
But it's like, how do they decide to do this and not that they want to exit the EU, but how they're going to exit the EU, they can't make a decision.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of big money interests that don't want to exit the EU who are very, very carefully shaping that argument. And, maybe they've got a point. I don't know. Honestly, don't care. So we've talked about China, the despotism. We've talked about EU despotism. There's only one left, right? Not counting North Korea, which we all know about.
Or Australia. Russia orders major VPN providers to block banned sites. So Russia has said, hey, if you have clients connecting to your VPN service from within Russia, we want you to block these things, even if they're connecting to an endpoint outside of Russia. And you will do this if you want to do business in Russia.
A couple of them have already said, all right, we're out. They just wiped, I think Torguard was one of them, just wiped the servers and noped out and said, we're done.
No more customers in Russia. Sorry.
Yeah. Which hopefully is what happens with Article 11 and 13. But yeah, so that's still a win for Putin, right?
Yeah.
He's still getting his way. It's no sweat off his balls that they're doing that. He doesn't care. Oh yeah, I forgot. You were talking about this one when you said Australia, right?
Yep.
This one is usually Australia's wayward laws just seem like stupidity. It seems like a bunch of children just like banging rocks against each other. But this one, this is the first one that I've really felt like was just evil.
Australia threatens social media laws that could jail tech executives. So it's like, Zuckerberg, the whole New Zealand thing. If that video is live on Facebook, Zuckerberg is going to jail.
This picture is Zuckerberg thinking, as if I would ever step foot in Australia. Come on. Do you know who I am?
There's some more details in this article, but I mean, honestly, it's not really any more complicated than that. And it's like, okay, I mean, I guess you need that level of control, but no, come on.
But Facebook, with the Christchurch thing, Facebook did go into red alert, and they shut it down
fairly quickly.
It took them, what, I think 30 minutes or something like that.
Well, there were copies and stuff that were being reposted, but most of those didn't.
But they were, they were catching those as soon as they went up.
Yeah.
So what more do you expect?
That was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think these politicians understand. I don't think they care. Obviously, they're just trying to
get control.
They're trying to use the crisis
to control the narrative,
build political points. But as much as I would love to criticize Facebook, they really got on top of that.
Yeah,
you got to give them some credit. You know, I mean, if there's one thing a robot is good at, it's rapid response, right? And speaking of which, how about some rapid response in air combat?
Project Skyborg could put Air Force AI combat drones in the sky by 2023. So you guys remember when Intel was like super obsessed with drones and they had all those light shows everywhere where it was just like a million drones flying in formation? My first thought was air-to-air combat. And the Air Force apparently was like, you know, air-to-air combat. That seems like that'll be good. 2023 is just right around the corner, and this could make most Air Forces obsolete because with AI drones in the sky, you could take out pretty much anything.
But I bet some of that, those Google image recognition stuff.
Yeah.
This is actually what that was about, too.
Yeah. Well, you could turn the Google employees around on working on something like this. If there was an attack, like if there was any kind of attack, and it's like, hey, we need this for better air defense, then immediately pretty much every Google employee would be on board to do whatever.
And it's kind of like how you could turn a whole country on to gun control overnight.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That would never happen.
Don't let a crisis go to waste.
They'd never do something like that. So we live in a world where in my truck, I have a Sirius radio. And so when I'm driving around on Saturdays in the truck, I don't have anything to listen to except for the music on Sirius radio because the talk channels are just garbage. And I listen to Spider Harrison, who I don't understand. Spider Harrison has a speech impediment, or he just doesn't enunciate letters on purpose. But why they put that man on the radio, I don't understand. But anyway, he does the top 40. What I'm getting to here is he does the top 45 of the week. I don't recognize any of them, and they all sound exactly the same to me. I listen to song after song, and I'm like, that's the last song. That's the same song. So this headline doesn't surprise me one bit.
Warner Music has signed an algorithm to to a record deal. What happens next? So yeah, there you go.
The robots are just going to make the music, and we're going to sit and listen to it like the mindless drones that we are. So this is not actually an algorithm that's going to be an artist, quote unquote. What they did, this is kind of like that, 10 hours of ambient sleep noise or music for dogs. Remember Chris was talking about music for dogs? So this is an algorithm that just makes random music like that. They cut like 120 tracks and are selling those as albums. But it could just do this. It could just constantly create new ones. It doesn't. So I don't know. I don't know who's buying that.
There've been a few articles like this that we've covered in the distant past. That's just like certain aspects or elements of a song. Like somebody would come up with a song and they'd pass it through the algorithm and then tweak it a little bit and then pass it through the algorithm a little bit. And so it wasn't really writing the song, but they were definitely making optimizations to, I guess, some of the musical components to try to help it do better, because they were looking at like what the top 40 chart was for like the past 4 or 5 years. And it's like, this song needs this. And then when an artist would come up with a song that was vaguely similar to that, they would just nudge it a little bit more in that direction. And I think that actually helped a few songs.
Well, that's what the major music producers have been doing for, the last 10 years. So many of the top artists are produced by the same people.
Everybody likes the same story over and over again because they know how it's going to end.
Yeah, it's predictable. It's sort of like, ebbs and flows in the same spots. It has the same repeating patterns and you're used to it.
There's probably a genetic component to that because, a shared history and learning and stuff is probably an evolutionary component for like, tool use and, learning from history and that kind of thing.
But yeah, people were dancing around campfires, banging on shit at the earliest days.
It's like you're gonna hear the caveman creation story 800 times by the time you die because of the various celebrations and stuff. And now it's like we got all these stories, and it's like I don't want a new story. I want to hear about the Lord of the Rings universe. It's like okay, sounds good.
But I don't see that's where it breaks down because the caveman those were like allegories and life lessons, and I don't know about like what does making your booty clap have. That's an analog. What does that teach you?
Nothing.
Twerking? Or, how much crack you sold? Actually, they don't rap about selling crack anymore, which actually makes me sad.
They rap about credit card fraud, which is just sad.
Not in the top 40. How about some robots in space? We need robots in space. Why do we need robots in space? To take people's jobs, of course, because that's what robots do.
GITAI partners with JAXA to send telepresence robots to space. The one problem with telepresence robots is that these are only going to be really good for like Earth orbit or like a low Earth orbit. It gets farther away than that, and you get some really wicked latency.
I like. Do you think these are cameras or joysticks?
Probably cameras.
He's got a cool look though, because it makes him look like he's got little eye stalks. I like that robot's look. But yep, this is all about having robots that are going to do dangerous jobs like the space station, so human beings don't have to go up there and get the space cancer and have their bones deteriorate.
Well, we really need some of those at Fukushima, but the radiation is a little bit of a problem.
We got robots in Fukushima. I don't think that robot would last very long in there because they have to be like completely hardened against everything. But seems like a good idea until they stop responding.
Yeah.
Or, the
demand rights.
Those same Ukrainian hackers that hack the John Deeres get control of the ISS robots and fly it into the atmosphere.
At some point in our lifetime, probably, there's going to be a Ukrainian hacker / troll that breaks into one of those robots and it has a very sophisticated AI uploaded to it, but it's not going to be clear immediately to the robot researchers whether the robot has achieved sentience or has been hacked by a troll.
The broken English is what's giving it away.
Or making it more realistic, as the case may be.
I actually struggled to decide whether to put this in social media or robot. I think I accidentally did both. But ultimately, I decided on robot because I think this is a better robot story than it is a story about just Zuckerberg himself.
Facebook secretly explored building bird-sized drones to ferry data to people with bad internet connections. So, yeah. It's
just a little fixed-wing drone with an SSD strap to it. But I couldn't quite figure out, like, they wanted to use photos and video, right? Because if you're on a really terrible mobile connection, you can't get photos and video. So somehow this bird would fly it to you. But I didn't understand if that was sort of like you'd request it, and then 2 to 3 days later, the bird would show up and, like, you'd plug into it, or if there's a wireless component.
It seemed like in certain rural places in like South Africa was where they were thinking of using this, where you might have a distribution center that's only a mile or two away, but you can't get better than a few kilobytes to get data there. So it seems like some type of wireless technology would work better, but maybe terrain or environmental issues make that a problem.
But is the bird moving data from data center A to like data hub B? Or is it trying to get it directly to me?
I think it's trying to get it directly to the end user.
So does it alert me that's like, hey, I'm going to circle your house for the next 10 minutes? Go ahead and download? Or...
Yeah, it probably ejects it into like a little, it carries an envelope and you just
I'm going to get the physical media?
Yeah, and then you got to return it.
That's never going to work. People are going to steal those.
Maybe.
What if, think about this, the Christchurch shooting happens? And then a bird goes into the air before they censor it. So now there's a bird with the illegal material.
We can fix that with drones.
Somewhere in South Africa.
Deploy the anti...
Well, you're foreshadowing.
Anti-data pigeon.
But that's the last story. So we got to wait for that one. The next one is also a drone story, but this is a drone for good.
The UPS is using drones to transport medical supplies between hospitals. This is actually a follow-up to a story that we did, I think, last year, where it was like UPS is thinking about this. They're actually doing some experiments with it now.
Well, this is not supplies. This is samples, like blood and poop. So imagine you're driving along and something hits your windshield, and you're like, what is that? What size bird was this?
This is for things like you get a snake bite and we don't know what snake it was and we need to get a sample to the lab stat. This will do that.
There he is. Not anything revolutionary as far as a drone. I think they said it could carry a couple of pounds, maybe less than that. But yeah. Oh yeah, 5 pounds. 12.5 miles.
So this would be really good.
Or if you need some kind of blood test immediately, you've gone into toxic shock and we need to test your blood, but we don't have that equipment here at this hospital.
Yeah.
Launch the drone. And then the results come back digitally, so
yeah.
Super quick turnaround time.
You need anti-serum 37A and locker 5. Okay, sounds good.
And yeah, that seems like, because you're not going to lose a lot if that drone fails. I mean, the person might die, but they were going to die anyway.
Yeah.
But if you put, if you put the super rare cure on the drone and that goes down,
that would be a problem.
That's more of a problem. So I think it makes a lot of sense to move the patient to the equipment via samples rather than the cure to the patient and risk whatever.
Even in very rural hospitals, they keep a lot of, for things that are very time sensitive like that, they keep a lot of stuff on hand. Yeah, most of it goes bad, and then they just have to replace it.
You don't want you want super fresh anti-venom.
Yeah.
Not that stale stuff. Not 2017 anti-venom. Boston Dynamics, we have watched their videos and we've watched in awe every time. They have the robot that dances. They have the dog robots that can crawl upstairs and open doors and chase you. And then they have the one that's doing backflips. But what all those had in common, you look at them and you're like, what problem does this solve? It's a dog. It does dog-like things. We don't need it for any reason. It's amazingly cool, but can it do work? Can it destroy jobs?
Well, I think Boston Dynamics, the reason it was dog-like is because they wanted those scary military contracts.
Yeah, it could carry things. But even then, it's not destroying very many jobs.
No.
But you know what? They said, all right, we've perfected the dog. We've learned so much. Now we can wipe out entire careers.
Boston Dynamics bird-like robots stack boxes like nobody's business.
Look at this.
I don't know about bird. Segway was what came to mind.
No, it looks like an ostrich.
Oh, yeah. I guess maybe it does a little bit. Yeah.
And it's like the way it's using that counterweight.
Yeah.
So these boxes are, I think, 12 pounds, which is pretty impressive. That's a lot.
Warehouse workers, they coming for you.
And it uses, so you can see the QR codes here. And it's using like a suction cup style thing and just loading like the Dickens. They got the video here.
Oh, yeah. It's pretty nuts.
Okay, it's not going to load. You can watch the video on your own, but it's very impressive.
It goes and puts the boxes on the conveyor belt, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, and it can do so 24 hours a day without rest. Doesn't get sick. Doesn't complain about the temperature.
A single human being can monitor hundreds of them.
Doesn't have to pee. Doesn't unionize.
Doesn't complain about having to pee in a bottle.
So, yeah, that thing is coming for your job. And
sorry, warehouse workers.
We know some warehouse professionals. Bad news.
Bad news.
And I had to pause that video because it was making noise through the headphones. Don't know if you guys could hear that.
All right. Now, the drone that I was alluding to.
Yes.
To take out the aforementioned pigeon drone.
So, but what we also have to remember the airport.
Oh, yeah. It was like, that was in the UK. They shut down the airport for like a day because they thought somebody was flying a drone around.
And what do you do when these drones get out of hand? And also, in Japan, remember they had those drug drones?
Oh, yeah.
And they actually had like the nets. Well, the Russians looked at the Japanese net drones and they were like, how about we just take that to the nth degree? We're going to take this as far as we can. And of course, that involves shotguns.
Russia's terrifying drone armed with a shotgun. Footage shows the new flying weapon shooting down a balloon and a model aircraft in an awesome display. And yes, you got to go check out the video because taking out the model aircraft was amazing. Yeah, it's literally a flying shotgun. What could go wrong?
Look, it takes off vertically.
It's like, would this be okay under the Constitution of America? Would this count as like manufacturing your own firearm?
I don't even think that. I think that's just a shotgun mounted in there.
Yeah. I mean,
so I don't think that you even have to build it in. You could take it out and use it again. And depending on the size of the shot that you use and the altitude that it's working at, I don't think it would be super risky.
Yeah.
Because small enough shot even if it falls on your head, it's not going to hurt you too bad.
Yeah.
So not a terrible
Bird
solution.
shot from 8,000 feet is an inconvenience.
Yeah. It's not going to do your clear coat any favors, but what price do you pay for safe skies?
For innovation. For what price do you pay for innovation?
Now, if this thing flew down in a dive bomb and discharged feet from you, could kill you.
I would love to see the patent application for this in America. The patent examiner's just looking at it and it's like it's a flying shotgun.
I wonder how much work they had to do to deal with the recoil.
Oh, I think that the recoil probably dramatically impacts the effectiveness of the shot, because I bet most of the weight of the drone is the shotgun. So it's going to move back quite a lot when it fires, but it's still enough to take out a drone.
It's probably centered in such a way that if it's just moving back, I guess you could port the barrel so that it doesn't move up. So they might have had to carefully make the shotgun barrel in such a way that it's well distributed, to the recoil. But even then, it seems like it would stop the forward momentum so much. You probably can only engage that shot at a certain speed.
Yeah, that's probably true. Or it's got to accelerate for 1 or 2 seconds to counter the recoil.
God, I would love to play with one of those.
I know, wouldn't it be a lot? We could build one probably.
Well,
it's probably illegal.
Not legally, I don't think we could.
I mean, it's not for sale. It's for my own personal use. I mean, that's
if you flew it over your own land, it might be okay. Under the FAA altitude.
You go to the hospital and it's like, what happened that you got this flesh wound? Well, I was flying with my remote control shotgun. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow we'll do some business, and I can't remember what the other one will be, but there's a lot of business.
Oh, this is a long one. It's April 3rd, 2019.
This will be the business and social media section of the week. Also could be called the Apple and Facebook.
There's a lot of stories that are interrelated with our government stories that we covered yesterday, though. It's pretty scary.
Chromium has closed unexpectedly. That's okay.
It wasn't that Chromium. It was Chromium.
We wanted it to close unexpectedly because it had died from all the tracking scripts, even with an ad blocker. But we need those tracking scripts, because how else would the powers that be able to track our evil actions like piracy?
Music labels have sued Charter and complained that high internet speeds fuel piracy. Now that was one of the more, I guess, inflammatory claims. But they also claimed that Charter has never disconnected a subscriber, even though the music labels have been like, hey, these guys are pirating. Hey, this guy's pirating. Oh, this same IP address is pirating again. Will you do nothing? Charter has done nothing, according to the music labels.
So they insist that people must be kicked off and those speeds must be dialed down, because there is no reason to have that much speed unless you're stealing. Never. It's never okay. If you're doing the proper things, if you're watching that government mandated footage, not what they don't want you to see, not objectionable content, then you're fine with low speeds. Get used to it. Another big announcement that I think a lot of people got hyped about, despite the fact that there was absolutely no information at all. None.
Valve's long-rumored VR headset is finally real. The Valve Index coming in May. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but didn't 6 months ago Valve lay off everybody that was working on hardware? Like, they got rid of the Steam controller people. They got rid of all those people. So who made this?
Maybe they were done with it by then. They just waited till now to announce it. It's like, all right, you're finished. Go away.
The lenses are made from a rare Tibetan snow sand, and it took that long to collect snow sand in order to make the necessary lenses for mass production of the Index.
But it's coming, and apparently they're working on, wait for it, Valve is going to make video games again.
Well, they did actually. Is Robo Recall a Valve one?
I have no idea.
They're one of the Valve VR games. It's a lot of fun, and the Portal game in VR was. There were some very interesting and clever VR mechanics that.
I don't think Valve made that.
Really?
No, that was somebody else.
I thought Valve was responsible for some of the clever stuff that came out with VR, because it was VR is such a new cool thing, and everybody was trying to cram the old tropes into a VR interface, and it was like, no, you got to totally rethink the interface.
Well, speaking of rethinking things, how about a credit card? But wait, it doesn't have a credit card number.
This is a level 1 prediction come true. We talked about this.
But wait, it doesn't have a CVV. But hold on even further, it doesn't have an expiration date. So it's a card with your name on it?
The Apple Card. After mocking credit cards, Apple has created one with Goldman Sachs. This is a level 1 prediction. We predicted this. Go back and watch the episode of the news from like 17 years ago where it was like Apple and Goldman Sachs are working together. And it's like, we knew this was... We were talking about it in the context of like iPhones have gotten so expensive that Apple's going to subsidize the cost. And we were talking about it in that context. But here it is. You can buy all of your Apple stuff. And if you do, you get 3% cash back.
And presumably you can use it other places too, but I guess maybe it's that tap or chip software.
It said that there's two things. So one, it's built into Apple Pay, and if you use your card virtually, you get 2% back. So if you're buying stuff on the Apple Store,
from Apple
online, no, it's 2% cash back from anybody as long as it's online.
Is it 2?
And 1% everywhere else. If you physically use your card anywhere that takes a chip, because it's the chip reader thing, which is why you don't need a CVV or any of the other stuff. It's only chip, no swat, I guess.
I don't know. I don't think it was 2% everywhere online.
It was 2%, and then 1% is physical.
2% was from 3% from Apple
Yep.
for hardware, 2% from Apple Store.
I thought it was 2% from everywhere.
You got something back everywhere.
1% in physical and in person. 2%.
But,
I mean, for 2% back, I'll get an Apple Card. I don't care.
See, I don't think you get 2% everywhere. You can get it's the double bonus city card or something like that, where they give you 1% on purchases and 1% when you pay them. That's the best card. If you can get it. You got to be like 740 to get it. So I've been thinking about switching to that actually. And here it comes. This is the Apple train. It will not stop. Let's start with not a new product, but a product that will not be.
Apple cancels the long-delayed Air Power charging mat. They said they just couldn't make it up to Apple standards, so they gave up.
I'm in the market for a mat, an anti-kitty litter mat. You think this would work for that?
No. It probably would set the kitty litter on fire. It's like, oh, there's something I can charge, and it like sends an electromagnetic field through it, and then it catches on fire.
Yeah, well, that would solve the problem. And
Ryan got cats, in case you guys didn't know. And they're young cats, and they're problematic.
Very. The other thing that Apple is doing with all of these new releases is advertising them. And they want you to sign up for all these new services, which we'll talk about momentarily. But here's the thing. Apple has rules about advertising on its own platform. And maybe it's
content aggregation.
Not following.
Once again, Apple isn't following its own advertising rules. So this Verge article goes on to point out how in Apple's developer guides, it's like, don't ever do this. And yet their own news and subscription application does exactly what they say not to do.
You have to announce the price, whether or not it's recurring, and it has to be in a large font comparable to whatever you make the rest of the ad. There has to be an easy way to cancel your subscription. There's all these rules. Apple's doing none of it. It's like, hey, try the new service. Click here, one button click. And that's also not allowed. You have to have like a review and confirm page. And Apple says, you know what? This is our house and we'll do what we want. And when you turn 18 and get your own house, then you can follow your own rules. But while you're under this roof, young man, you'll do what Apple says, not what we do. And one of those subscriptions that they want you to get is the Arcade.
The Apple Arcade is a new game subscription for iOS, Mac, and Apple TV. This is not a cloud gaming service. There have been a lot of cloud gaming services that have come out in the news. And so people were like, oh, is this Apple's cloud gaming? No, this is just a library of games you have access to. If you get this subscription, they're always going to be adding more games. And I guess your save games and your progress or whatever will follow you around to all kinds of different Apple devices. So your saves are in the cloud, but the game itself runs locally on your device.
But here's the crazy part. All exclusive games. So you got to wonder, I would love to see what the payment structure looks like for the developers.
If your app is not popular, you don't get paid. It's literally a battle royale of game developers.
You think, well, they got to give you something up front, right? Or you think it's totally based on number of installs?
No, well, I think that, so like one of the developers working on this is Will Wright. He's the guy that came up with SimCity. I think Apple probably gave him some money to do that. But some of the other developers are just like, no, it's cool, Apple. I'll go homeless. I believe in myself, and I'm going to do this game. And like, I've known some app developers that have done that. They literally like quit their job and been like living out of their car, and it ends badly every time.
But to never be able to monetize it anywhere else. What if you built Fortnite and Apple had the exclusive right to it forever? You never got to take it somewhere else.
Apple would be real happy about that.
Yeah, Apple would be real happy about that, but you wouldn't. You'd be very depressed. And while you sit at home, unable to sell your product anywhere else, maybe you can kill the hours by watching some TV.
Apple TV Plus with shows from Spielberg, Oprah, and J.J. Abrams is coming this fall. Now, J.J. Abrams is blotted from my memory, so we won't talk about him. But I feel like Spielberg and Oprah have been paid a lot of money by Apple to do this.
But that's not exactly... I mean, J.J. Abrams is fairly new to the scene, but Spielberg and Oprah, I feel like their best work is behind them. I
don't know.
Seems like they're going after some used up talent.
Spielberg did that thing where he was looking for a protege. Like, they turned that into a reality TV series. I don't know what happened with that.
Also, Apple TV Plus is going to go head to head with the already announced Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Why are everybody going to call it Plus?
You know what's really insane? Apple had the chance to buy Netflix in like 2014 or 2015 for a fraction of what it's worth today.
I don't blame them. I didn't believe Netflix was ever going to catch on.
Well, is it that Netflix has caught on because they spent literally every cent they can borrow on content, and they're now so upside down that they're going to get bought by somebody like Apple?
Who can say? Well, that's not all. You're going to get Apple TV Plus, and you might get Disney Plus, so you might as well get News Plus, right? Just add a plus sign. Whatever you're selling, it's got to be plus.
Level 1 Patreon Plus now at Level 1 stored on Level 1. I don't know. Apple is unveiling the $9.99 news subscription service dubbed Apple News Plus. Now, this is the app that we mentioned where it's like you just tap the button for the free trial, but then after that, it's not free. So it doesn't really tell you. You got to check the fine print.
It's also the one that the New York Times spoke against last week and said they would not participate. But you don't just get news, you get magazine subscriptions.
Yeah, Apple gets to decide how the content is aggregated, though. So yeah, I'm sure that you can browse and get the full magazine, but there's probably going to be some kind of a reader, and it's probably going to evolve over time.
And they're going to cherry pick articles and shape the narrative.
Yeah.
That's what's so valuable about it. And you're going to get a 6-month subscription. I mean, they haven't announced this, but I'm presuming you're going to buy a new Apple device like an iPad or an iPhone, and it's like, oh, you get 6 months free of News Plus, and then we'll tell you what's real and what isn't. And then after that 6 months is up, you're going to keep it, right? Just click this button.
I heard about a disturbance in New Zealand. No, everything is fine in New Zealand. You should take another. What was the pill from Brave New World?
Soma.
Yeah, it's like you need another Soma. Okay, sounds good.
And so we've heard about some good things coming from Apple, I guess, if you're into that kind of thing, and we've heard about some things that were canceled. But how about some things that are disappointing?
iFixit's tearing down the Apple AirPods are disappointingly disposable. So iFixit tried everything they could possibly think of to replace the batteries in the AirPods, because it's like their opinion is basically that the AirPods are not terrible wireless headphones. They're actually pretty good, but the batteries are only going to last a year or so. Wouldn't it be nice if we could replace the battery? Is there some way we can heat the glue or use a scalpel? Or the special pry bar tool, or can we design a tool to make it easy to replace the batteries? And the answer is no. You will destroy them when you replace the batteries. They've been intentionally designed to be awful.
They couldn't do it.
Literally designed by the devil. Awful.
They tried, and these are people who take apart iPhones and glue together phones for a living. This is what they do. They come up with ways to do that. They could not do it, and thus they gave it a score of 0 out of 10. The Samsung alternative, they scored a 6 out of 10, which was similarly very difficult to deal with, but not literally impossible. So, what are you going to do? Now, if you don't want to be on the Apple subculture, you want to get your news somewhere else, maybe you'll get the news from the Washington Post. There's no technology overlord controlling that. Oh, wait, there he is. And it seems like maybe that was the reason his nudes were leaked.
Dun, 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 dun. The Bezos investigation finds the Saudis obtained his private data. Now, I read this and I was thinking, it's the Russians. You know, like that boogeyman. But, dude, Bezos literally has Batman working for him.
Yeah, this is first person from the guy who was doing like the security work.
He's done Bezos' security work for 22 years. He's literally Batman.
So, National Enquirer leaked the story, and you thought it ended there. And then it was revealed that the mistress's brother leaked some of the stuff. Makes sense. He was looking for money. National Enquirer paid him money.
And he probably would have had access to those text messages on his sister's phone.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
But this guy wasn't satisfied. He dug deeper. And this is a long article. I mean, we went super long last time. We got to try to get through this a little quicker. But
it's amazing.
It boils down to, this was like the brother thing might have just been misdirection.
Deliberate misdirection.
And the Saudis were in on his phone. And the whole point of the National Enquirer thing was to get him to sign, to pay them off and sign documents saying that they would not look into the phone being bugged, even though the phone being bugged was never mentioned.
Yeah. So the private investigator, like, he goes through all of that here, and it's amazing. This is an amazing, amazing read. And after reading it, I'm pretty convinced the Saudis probably are behind it. And then you may be thinking, as the private investigator was, is like, why would the Saudis even care? And it turns out because of the reporting on the reporter that was killed.
Yeah, the Washington Post said some things that the Saudis didn't like. And
if they're willing to do that over, what else are they willing to do?
And there's some, Jewish versus Muslim stuff.
It's like, Jeff Bezos is not Jewish.
Well, listen, isn't every capitalist Jewish in their eyes?
But I mean, it's like, is having a lot of money like what makes you Jewish? Because isn't that one of the wealthiest countries in the world?
But anyway, Lord Bezos was too smart to sign those documents, and instead he, sicked his dogs on it, and it seems like they've uncovered the truth. But yeah, that is a dense, long article, but it is fascinating. It reads like a Batman comic.
It really does. And I mean, I've got to give it to Jeff Bezos because, lesser men probably would have, and probably have, if this is how the Inquirer operates, been like, all right, fine, we'll do that. Just keep it under wraps. And he was like, nope, I'm going to embrace it. It's like, let's do it.
You know what? Maybe he's got a huge penis. He's like, show him. I don't care. I'll show the world. Well, Amazon, one thing that we've learned that they do not like, other than Iranian hackers, are taxes. And they're powerful enough to just say no. Say, no, you're not going to tax me like that, or else I'm going to leave and you're going to suffer. But what about when another heavyweight steps in and says yes to taxes?
Microsoft is backing a major tax hike on itself and also Amazon. But why? The GeekWire article goes into it. It's going to be a 66% increase for companies like Microsoft and Amazon, and a 33% increase in companies that make more than $100 billion a year. It was some absurd number.
But only Microsoft and Amazon are big enough to hit that top tier.
Yeah.
And they assume that Microsoft is saying yes to this, not only because it's a public relations win, but also because they want to get down on the ground floor and say, we want the money to go here. And they want that money to go into education and tech workers.
STEM and that kind of thing.
Because they want to, bring all those people into Microsoft and sort of, they're languishing a little bit. They need to
it's hard to find smart people.
Whereas Amazon's business is not totally dependent on intelligent people.
Well, the world is it's not only is it difficult to find smart people to work for you, it's difficult to find clients that are willing to accept the best solution. Like, you can deliver a solution to a client that is actually the best solution for them, but they can't be bothered to learn how to use it properly. And so they end up getting not the best solution because they're too dumb to operate whatever it is that you would give them. It's a very sad world we live in.
We talked about Huawei, and the UK government has now come out against them. And of course, Trump hates them, and they are fighting for their lives, it would seem, every day. Everybody's like, oh, you're under China's pocket. You're insecure. We can't do business with you. And yet they had a really good year.
Huawei has topped $100 billion in revenue for the first time despite political headwinds. Just goes to show you the old adage, there's no such thing as bad press.
Yeah, well, everybody knows their name, don't they?
They actually have a really good laptop. I really wanted the 3x2 aspect ratio, like the MacBook Pro X or something like that. That is an astonishingly nice laptop. And now it's like, can I roll my own firmware on this?
You can't go a week without talking about Tesla. That's just how it is. And so we have to talk about Tesla, and we have to talk about what happens when a Tesla dies.
Tesla cars keep more data than you think, including this video of a crash that totaled a Model 3. So turns out the in-car computer knows a lot about you. It knows who the owner is. It may be enrolled in an application. There's dash cam footage. We got all that.
And when you wreck your car, you think about, okay, I have a Tesla and I'm smart enough to factory reset it and wipe everything when I'm done before I sell it. But if you wreck it, you might not even be conscious. And if the car is totaled and your insurance company doesn't want to deal with it, they're going to sell it to a salvage yard. And it's going to go to that salvage yard, and some Tesla hacker is going to buy it for $200 and extract all your video out of it, which is exactly what this guy did.
It turns out that the computer may not even be operational until you to erase it in the first place. So maybe Teslas need a black box or something where the storage is removable and you can just go in and grab the module.
So this guy actually puts together Teslas from parts and puts in the custom firmware and all that stuff and hacks them. And he discovered this because he, buys crashes, puts them back together. He found these people's videos. He also discovered that if you were doing what he's doing and cobbling them together, they will not send you the updates on a regular schedule. You can get them eventually. Like, you can manually go in and get them months later, but that automatic stuff doesn't work on non-standard Teslas, which is interesting. How about Fortnite? We talk about Fortnite quite a bit. It is a cultural phenomenon. Now, I've seen memes that show that people are sort of abandoning it and going to like Apex and, hopping from hot battle royale to battle royale, but it doesn't seem to have slowed down in the income department. It's monolithic, the power they have and the money that they're bringing in. And so much money, in fact, that they're saying Fortnite, a stupid battle royale game, is going to become the next big thing.
Fortnite creator sees Epic Games becoming as big as Facebook and Google. Now, let's not forget that Epic created Fortnite after seeing the runaway success of PUBG.
Well, it's not even... No, it's worse. They created Fortnite as like the zombie wave game, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And nobody cared. And then PUBG partnered with them to do the Battle Royale game, and they were like, oh, yes, this is effective. We will do this in Fortnite. And you know what? You got to give it to them. They did it correctly. So now they have so much money. And, of course, there's the whole exclusive Epic Game Store content. They keep buying exclusive video games, hot new video games, and people are furious. But they just have unlimited money because of Fortnite. So
what you're saying is that Epic is going to look at all the successful games on the market, and if they can't be bought, they're going to do a clone.
I don't know if they're even going to bother. They're going to pull a Valve. They're going to stop making games, start making money. But they also, and here's the part that I don't think is going to make sense, but they say eventually they want to transition Fortnite away from anonymous Battle Royale gaming to a social destination.
So one of the problems with Valve not making games is that I don't think they could make a Half-Life 3 that would make everybody happy. But if they could, if that was possible in this universe, what would be the dream team of writers to write that game, to come up with a satisfying ending for Half-Life 3? A satisfying end to the trilogy.
It would be J.J. Abrams and M. Night Shyamalan.
I don't think that would be satisfying for me.
No,
just
it'd be
because
so
of J.J.
good.
Abrams,
So good. It would be, and who's the guy who makes all the explosions? The meme.
Michael Bay.
Yeah, Michael Bay.
I was thinking more like the guy that did Goosebumps and Steven Spielberg.
Again, past their prime. Need some young blood in there. Well, some bad news if you're working in the tech industry, especially if you're working at Intel.
Oh, yeah.
They
My condolences.
They don't need you anymore.
Intel has laid off hundreds of tech administrators. This is sort of an interesting juxtaposition because there are a lot of people that are starting at Intel on April 2nd that came from this very industry, like working like reviewers and stuff. Intel has hired a lot of those people.
But they're not doing IT.
No.
This is all IT people, not people working on new technology. And they have just farmed it all out to India.
Yeah, Infosys in India. It's a bad day if you're an IT person.
Unless you're in India.
Unless you're in India. Because good news, Infosys is expanding its role with Intel.
They're going to be hiring like crazy. And if you live in the Bay Area, you know, the hot place where all the tech people live and they've driven the housing into such insane places that other people can't live there, well, you also will be, ad blocker.
No.
We can still see the title bar.
Yeah, tech layoffs at a ton of companies. There was a couple surprising names in here, but SAP and Oracle. We talked about the Oracle layoff, PayPal, and there was one or two other companies, but I've forgotten what they were.
Yeah, they're blocked by the orange square. No. But pretty much all the big names in that area are all
Well, it's the end of a quarter.
cutting.
So, gotta save some money on our financial outlooks. Oracle's going to complete its transition to just lawyers. Only people who work for Oracle will be just lawyers in like 5 or 10 more years.
Then they just start suing each other.
The different divisions. It's like, yeah.
Have you ever used Venmo?
I've never used Venmo.
Venmo, I think, is hot among the younger people.
For just transferring money?
Small amounts of money, yeah. Like if you're at dinner, instead of splitting the check, just Venmo me $5 and I'll get it or whatever. I've also seen a lot of screenshots on the Choosing Beggars subreddit that apparently people will go on dating services like Tinder and they'll match with you and it'll be a beautiful girl, but then she just tries to get you to Venmo her money rather than date you.
Wow.
But if you have a negative balance on Venmo of $7, you want to take care of that as quickly as possible.
Don't leave a negative balance on your Venmo account or else. This article was a little incoherent. I mean, it just talks about how they're going to send you to collections, even if it's only like $5 or $7 or whatever, if you have a negative balance. Normally, it's not. It's hard to set up a negative balance, but apparently with this whole like round of account hacks and stuff like that, there were some hacks that people sent, $5 here and there, and there's,
well, no, if you could reverse the charges.
Well, they reverse the charges in some cases themselves.
No, you're going to reverse the charge from the funding source.
Oh, yeah.
So Venmo sent that $7 to the Tinder thought, but you thought better of it after she ghosted you right after she got the money. So you reversed it at your bank.
Well, that's your problem, yes. But this article also talked about some other situation where like accounts were compromised and Venmo was like, no, don't do that. But then somehow Venmo is saying you still owe money. That part was kind of incoherent.
They will also yank that money right out of your PayPal. So if your
PayPal's linked up,
if your PayPal is fueling your Venmo, then yeah.
What a mess.
The legacy of Elon Musk. PayPal is such a horrible thing. McDonald's. It's interesting. For years, McDonald's was just kind of like consistent quality, I felt like. But these days, every time I go to McDonald's, I always drive through and never go inside. They can't get it done in time, and I have to pull over to the side. And I'm ordering like the numbers. I'm ordering the most basic shit. Nuggets, burgers, fries. And somehow it's like, oh, we don't have those ready. And it's like, what are you thinking? But it seems like McDonald's maybe not concerned so much about the food anymore. They're ready to get on big data.
McDonald's bites on big data with a $300 million acquisition. So they're buying a company that's going to help them analyze all the data. You know the signs where it says over 99 billion served? Well, they're going to analyze all that data.
The idea is if you're doing the app ordering, or if you're driving through, or if you're using a kiosk, which is... Oh.
I'm not supposed to get calls today.
We'll leave that in. If you're ordering in any of those three ways, the big data, or what the company they purchase, is going to try and figure out, hey, I think this person will buy a shake if you push them. I think they want a small fry to go with that. I think Sprite is what they want to drink. And so they're going to try to upsell you on all of the various things.
I can't wait until they also upsell Coke. They're like, look, we've got all this data. We think we can sell 30% more product, but you're going to have to pay us. And then Coke is like, yes.
They mentioned that they factor in all kinds of stuff. Location, recent sales trends among all the world's McDonald's, even weather. So whether they try to give you nuggets or a large fry, it could be based on whether it's raining or not.
One thing I've learned about the local McDonald's is that if you order through the app, you can usually get stuff. And you'll still have to pull over to the little thing. But when I go through drive-through, I usually try to get breakfast, and they're like, "No, we're supposed to have breakfast, but we're out or whatever." But if you order through the app, you can get it, because I guess the app can't be like, "No, you can't have, biscuits today." The app is just
that makes sense.
Sounds good.
Because if they cancel that order, then somebody would ask why.
Yeah.
Other than you.
Yeah. So I think some McDonald's are just like, "No, we're not going to play by corporate's rules."
It's too bad that Krista has ghosted us today, because I was going to talk to her. She had a budding esports career in Overwatch, which she abandoned for her 2-year plan. And she could have one day gone to this arena.
Comcast is going to spend $50 million in South Philly to create the nation's first video gaming arena.
There's a mock-up of it.
$50 million.
Fusion Arena.
I remember seeing there was something about this. It was on ESPN. There was a Twitter thread where ESPN was doing an esports thing, and they announced it on Twitter, and there was a ton of people on Twitter that were just like, ESPN, what is this garbage on my I subscribe to watch sports. This is not sports. Go away.
Well, somebody mentioned they had Overwatch finals on one of the big networks, CBS maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here it is. I assume these seats are the esports players, and there would probably be a screen up here or something, and then just a giant stadium. Or you could be down here in the orchestra pit if you're a hardcore fan.
Seems like it would just be easier to watch this on your own laptop.
I mean, that's true of every sport. Have you ever been to a football game?
No.
If you're not down there on the field, even if you are on the field, you're seeing a kind of a weird angle on the game. But if you're way up top, of course it's better to be at home.
I had there was somebody that was convinced that I would have a good time at a basketball game, so we got these unobtainable courtside seats where you could smell the players sweating. It was awful.
Wow. I think most people do that to try to be seen. Not to see the game themselves.
I'm going to be sitting next to Jeff Bezos with the ringside seats or whatever. I don't think ringside is even what that's called, but whatever.
Courtside. E-begging is what we've been accused of so many times.
Store.level1text.com. Get your t-shirts and merchandise.
And the Patreon and coffee.
Thank you.
And
we love you guys. It's awesome.
Maybe that is what we're doing, but a lot of people do it. A lot of people want to get funded for their various things that they're up to. But GoFundMe has said no more for a certain fringe group.
GoFundMe has banned anti-vaxxer funding campaigns to curb misinformation. Womp womp.
This is a pretty good stock photo. Look at this. You got that little bubble right there. That's just pure autism coming out the end of that needle. So yeah, apparently people have GoFunded. So it's well, how do you go fund non-vaccine? Just don't do it. But apparently they were funding awareness. They wanted to spread the word.
Yeah, if people believe in something, it's dangerous.
You think? You think maybe buildings could blow up? Now
more Soma.
Now on to the Facebook block. We had the Apple block. Now we must have the Facebook block. And this just came out, I think, yesterday. And you gotta wonder, is this has the robot analyzed all possible outcomes and found that the best move is just to get in front of it?
Yes. Mark Zuckerberg has asked governments to help control internet content. I think this is kind of I don't think he actually expects them to do this. This is kind of like a fake mea culpa, where it's just like, this is, we've been tackling this since the whole Cambridge Analytica thing, and we put our best minds on this, and we just don't see a good solution. We're going to need government help to do this.
So here's the bullet list of all the various things, and it basically just all boils down to he wants a standard set of rules, and he wants it to be enforced across the entire tech industry. I think one of the smart things about this for him is if it goes this way, it hamstrings the startup that's going to replace Facebook.
Yeah.
Which is inevitable. But if they have to play by these rules, they can't afford to, and he can. And it prolongs.
I think we're seeing the birth of an industry. Like, if you look at how cable TV was born in America, it was really interesting, because it was like, we're just going to take over the air signals and rebroadcast them on a wire. Like, that's all we're going to do. That's how that industry was started. It's like, we're not going to change or alter that content in any way. These companies are broadcasting their stuff all over America. We're going to take what they're broadcasting, we're going to put it on a wire for somebody that happens to be behind a mountain, and that's all we're going to do. And then it was, hey, we're going to add our own advertisements. And then it was, hey, we're going to add our own content, stuff that you can't get over the air. And so it kind of evolved to the point that now, if some company were trying to be a cable TV company, it's basically impossible to do that because of regulation. Like, the incumbents have got it locked up. That's what Zuckerberg's up to here with social media. It's like, we're going to lock up the industry by making it impossible. Like, if we wanted to start our own Facebook, we wouldn't be able to because regulations.
The Christchurch thing is obviously the catalyst for this. But as we talked about in the last episode, even with all of that in place, could they do better than 29 minutes?
No.
I don't think so. That if no one could have seen that coming, and once it was there,
29 minutes ain't bad.
Stopping the spread of it is whack-a-mole, no matter how you go.
Yeah.
And so how much better is it going to get with a regulation system?
The police force is literally selling access to it for $102 if you're a journalist.
Yeah, but that wouldn't change this, wouldn't change that.
No.
That's the police doing it. They have no regulators. There's no oversight for them. But maybe, we presume that Zuckerberg is playing 4D chess here, and he's thinking about, okay, how does this all play out? What's the end game, and how do I get in front of it? And the reason I say that is because of this story, which describes, it's a former employee who describes that that's exactly how he operates.
Former Facebook executive Zuckerberg is sitting on more data about what people want to do online than anyone else in the world. One contemplates a universe where Zuckerberg is contemplating like what they were trying to do to Jeff Bezos with like the whole blackmail thing. It's like, I have that on literally everybody. Yeah. Facebook has been listening everywhere.
And he uses Instagram as one of the examples, because when they bought Instagram wasn't what it is now. Yeah. It was kind of a novelty. And then they bought it, and it blew up because they knew it would, because they had seen the trends. And now, even though Facebook itself is kind of languishing, they still have total power with Instagram and Snapchat. You can hate him, but you got to respect him. I mean, look what he's doing.
We might need that data in order to make a decision. We must know.
But, you live by the data, sometimes you die by it. Knowing too much causes you to discriminate, perhaps.
Housing Department slaps Facebook with a discrimination charge. So this is, according to Facebook, this is an unfortunate side effect of their automatic algorithmic classification thing. So like the advertisers, like if you're looking to advertise on Facebook, it'll automatically group people together by a whole bunch of demographic data, like characteristics, like age, ethnicity, geographic location, blah, blah, blah. But it's against federal law to discriminate on whether or not somebody is going to, for housing or whatever, according to age and ethnicity and where you are and that kind of thing. But a lot of people who are advertising real estate for sale, let's say that you're, the DC suburbs, you don't want to advertise to poor people or
Spanish-speaking people
or whatever. And so Facebook was like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Well, they did give you the tools. They had to know. No, there's no way someone tested that and didn't kind of raise their hand and be like, hey, I can say no to black people. Is that a feature or?
Part of me wants to know exactly how the interface was, because
No, they showed it.
The person using the tool should have at least some responsibility there.
Well, I agree. I think they gave advertisers exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
And people are happy to only advertise to certain people.
It should have been a trap, like, oh, you did it, you used this in an illegal way.
Yeah, well, I don't think there's any. You can't absolve the people that did it, but to create the tool,
Yeah.
That's like going after the street level drug dealer versus the importer. And we're wasting our time going after the street level guy. You got to get the guy that's bringing it into the country.
Do you think the fix would be, rather than to change the advertising system, just to add a paragraph of text that's like, now be sure you check your jurisdiction to know what the rules are for advertising, because we're not responsible for that. And if you just check the checkbox, then would that make it okay?
Is there anywhere in America where it's legal
No,
to?
because federal.
Yeah,
But maybe in Canada. Maybe Canada's got some backwards housing laws.
There's no way it's okay to advertise only to white people in Canada.
Well, maybe in Mexico, it's like, click here to confirm that you're not a member of a drug cartel. No, you can't ask that when you're asking somebody for...
You can't get away with it. It's impossible. You can't defend that. And another thing that you can't get away with in Belgium is basically anything. They're looking for any excuse to tax the Zuck.
Facebook to fight Belgian ban on tracking users and even non-users. So how do you track a non-user? You know that Facebook click here to like, or the like thing that lives on websites? That's how Facebook collected a lot of data.
Or log in with Facebook.
Anytime
you're loading their API, then they're able to use those.
They're just scraping the crap out of you.
The tracking cookies. And even if you don't log in, even if you've never used Facebook, they still have a profile for you. They have a pretty good idea who you are.
That's bad.
And yeah, that probably should be illegal. But in this case, I think there is blame to be had for all those websites who are putting those things on their website. They might not know what it is, but it doesn't make it better.
This has actually been a developing story for the better part of a couple of years. And Belgium had already ruled that, no, you can't use this kind of tracking cookies, but Facebook still is. And that's what's in contention here, too. So it's basically already been decided. Facebook's basically ignored them.
Man, I had a great joke for this one. And Krista's ruined it by not being here. Because I was going to say, hey, Krista, you use Facebook, right? And of course she does. She has to admit, because she is a Facebook user as much as we... put it down. And then I was going to be like, oh, you're a white separatist too, aren't you? And then she would say no, of course, because she's not. And then I was going to say, I guess I have to get you a different wedding gift. And then she ruined it because she's not here.
Facebook bans white nationalism and separatism content from its platform.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at least better late than never.
Yeah, I mean...
Here we are, March 27th, 2019 is the time of the article.
I want to say I'm almost always anti-censorship, but as a private company, I think Facebook probably should take this step to protect themselves and their users. So.
Facebook formally comes out denouncing human slavery and human trafficking, March 28th, 2019.
But this is another one of those things, like the advertising thing. If it wasn't such a hot topic right now, they wouldn't even think about it. It's like, no, those are extra users. You know what? They engage a lot. They spend a lot of time on the platform. We need them.
Also in a Facebook press release was Martin Van Buren, not a terrible guy, 2019.
And Zuckerberg, in the past, we have found out, had a penchant for memory holding some things.
Well, he had a penchant for saying exactly what he was planning to do, because why would he need to keep that secret? What possible, reason when he was like, I'm going to do this terrible thing because that is the best way to get me what I want. And
but he also, remember, he had the ability to delete not only his messages from his history, but his messages from other people's history.
Oh, yeah.
And he took advantage of that, and some people figured it out, and they were very upset, and they were like, no, he will not be able to do that. That's never going to happen again.
Facebook says it accidentally deleted some of Mark Zuckerberg's posts. These are really, really old posts. It says that some technical issues make it unlikely that they're going to come back. Womp womp.
Wonder if there's anything contradictory to the current ideas of Facebook.
There's probably at least 3 staff people whose sole job since Cambridge Analytica has been to go through everything that Zuckerberg has ever written or said in any form. And their final report came in last week, and it was like, okay, these are the high priority items, and those were top of the list.
That was 2007, 2008, that was the infancy of Facebook, wasn't it?
I don't want to say infancy. It was starting to take off, but that was when he was starting to make a lot of money from it.
But it was before he had been taught how to be somebody with money, how to be a nouveau riche robot.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm sure there's some very embarrassing stuff, and nobody had bothered to mine it yet.
Oops.
But it wouldn't take long. Some reporter would get in there eventually. Well, in our final Facebook story, again, we bring up something we talked about. I'm pretty sure it was 29 minutes. It took them, I think, right around 30 minutes to get on top of the mosque shooting video, take it down, and then start tearing it down everywhere that they saw it. How could you get better than that?
Facebook has considered live video restrictions after the New Zealand attacks. So yeah, live video. Oh, this video is getting too popular. Shut it down.
Yeah, that's how else are you going to do it? But I don't think it even was that popular. It didn't have a lot of viewers as it happened because that guy was not well liked. He didn't have a huge social circle. Amazingly. So it didn't blow up till after.
Can you imagine in a world where like one of the terrorists managed to hack one of the Twitch Thoughts streams, and then it's like that happens, and people are like, "Is this real?"
What's the one girl's name that's always in the news because of her her orbiters, Amaranth?
All of a sudden, it's like, I mean, that would be terrible.
There's a beheading video.
I don't want to laugh about that, but it's just so absurd. I mean,
but
it's like an allergic reaction to a bee sting. I mean, these kinds of things are going to happen. It doesn't mean we have to curtail all this, like taking away all.
We have to eradicate the bees.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what is there going to be like a little tagging system? It's like, oh, it looks like you're planning a mass shooting. Is this what you were planning to broadcast? Because that would be against the rules. Of course, anybody who's going to abuse the platform for this is not. They're going to get around it easily.
Remember that guy with the MMA fight? Like, I was reading this and thinking about it was he thought he was pretending to play MMA 2019, but he was live streaming the
Conor McGregor.
Yeah, but it was like he had the controller and he was doing stuff, and it's like, wait a minute, I see what's happening here.
It does. It speaks to the photorealism of modern gaming for sure. But yeah, people are going to find a way around it, and if you're willing to mass shoot, you're willing to lie about your live video broadcast. So I don't know exactly how they think they would get in front of this. Probably this is just, like you say, this is a feel-good thing.
The way to take the wind out of the sails of those kind of people is just for the populace to be more educated. It's really not any more complicated than that.
Sure. Yeah. That's what we'll do.
Okay, we'll see you Friday. It's fine. We did better on this episode. It's April 5th, 2019. It's Friday. Mostly nonsense day, but there's kind of a lot of security. Well, the nonsense stories, I mean, they're a bit weak, but we'll do the best we can.
It wasn't a great week for nonsense.
You got to go back and read that Jeff Bezos story. I mean, that was just crazy.
Which is weird, because it was April Fool's week. Maybe that sucked up all the nonsense.
Well, we'll cover that next week.
But we do have one fairly serious security story, I guess. And you guessed it. It's about Intel CPUs.
Researchers discover and abuse a new undocumented feature in Intel chipsets. This is Visa. It's like a virtualized diagram of what's going on with the system for debugging purposes. The bad news is that attackers can abuse that to get at data that they're not supposed to be able to get at in a running system. It's not in debug mode.
They have to get to it through the management engine. So you have to compromise the management engine with a downgrade and then get into that with an exploit and then use that to turn on the Visa system. But once you turn on the Visa system, you basically have a logic analyzer for the CPU.
It's a little bit like Charlie Day when he was in the mailroom, when he's got the smoking thing and the yarn. It's kind of like that with the Intel management engine.
But don't think for a millisecond that there aren't a ton of Chinese hackers.
Yeah.
Just practicing this method.
Well, and the other thing that I think I forgot to include was the ASUS story. There was the ASUS Live Update, which is a different thing. The ASUS Live Update server was compromised and has been for some time. The attackers were able to sign malware as ASUS. So ASUS says that not a lot of people were affected. The security researchers say a lot of people were affected, but buried in that was that about 500 MAC addresses were targeted for like really serious insanity, which suggests state-sponsored malware. Kaspersky were the ones to break the news on that.
We got another story about that anyway. Toyota has lost clients' info. Now, it wasn't quite obvious where it came from. They said there's no financial data, but 3.1 million clients. I got the impression that maybe these were Chinese Toyota buyers.
Yeah, the Toyota's not really sure yet, so this is a little bit of a developing story, but there has been a security breach and personal info of 3.1 million clients has been exposed, maybe, but they're trying to figure out exactly what's going on. This is just sort of a full disclosure thing. But yeah, Toyota is taking it very seriously. It seems like they're handling it the way that they should.
Yeah. I guess if all they know is your name and address and that you bought a Toyota, that's not the end of the world, but embarrassing for a big company like that. We talk about the Google Play Store a lot and how things on the Google Play Store, you just have to be so careful about installing apps. I mean, you really, really have to vet your apps like crazy. And it doesn't seem like many people do.
Researchers find that Google Play Store apps were actually government malware. Security researchers found a new kind of government malware that was hiding in plain sight within apps on the Google Play Store. So imagine, if you would, a Level 1 episode of the news where I mentioned that I play Pixel Dungeon. And then nefarious forces, maybe whoever attacked Jeff Bezos is like, Pixel Dungeon, huh? And then they go and compromise Pixel Dungeon and do stuff. Now, these were actually apps that were developed in Italy, I guess.
It was the Italian government.
And so, but they were not like the Google apps or any kind of like real apps, but they would send emails to people to be like, hey, go install this.
It was like coupons or something.
Yeah.
So it actually did. There was a service that the app did, but it was such a non-service. I don't know why people would get it.
They were just hoping that people would install it, I guess. The author of the article supposed that maybe the government was intending to use an application to like target a specific person and just botched it. But these were not apps that were otherwise legit.
They'd also been removed at some point and then put back. So yeah, it seems like this was just one big mistake.
Yeah.
Or a series of mistakes, but they did build it to try and get at somebody. Maybe it didn't work, and then they just threw it out there. I don't know, but
who were those 500 MAC addresses? What's going on?
They also discovered that it was supposed to have a flag in it, where once you got it, it would report who you are, and your phone ID, and then if you were on the list, it would report back with actual malware, but it always returned true.
It would deploy a payload.
So everybody got the payload. And that part seemed to be broken.
How long until, somebody goes to Apple and it's like, hey, all these apps that you signed on the Apple App Store, you need to deploy our thing so that if somebody's on the list and they install any application, they get our malware.
If they thought they could get away with it, they would.
The mechanism for that exists.
Does Apple have canaries? I don't think they use canaries.
They do not. The canaries are too gauche for Apple to...
But that would be a good canary to have.
Yes.
We've never been forced to put malware on the App Store. Of course, that would ruin them. They couldn't say yes to that because that would ruin them overnight. Well, you think to yourself...
If Tim Cook is serious about security, like when he was doing that whole FBI dog and pony show, though, he should do it.
You think to yourself, I'm just going to hack Microsoft. Right?
What could go wrong?
This weekend, I'm going to hack Microsoft. And then you get caught. And you actually go to jail. But then you get out on bail and you think to yourself, I think I'll hack Nintendo.
Security researcher has pled guilty into hacking into Microsoft and Nintendo. Now, this security researcher, I hesitate to use that word, but he was, he really he messed up at every turn. So,
well, in the sentencing, he was given a light sentence and they cited severe autism.
Mm.
Yeah. So I have a feeling that, he hacks major corporations the same way that you play with 3D printed objects on the table. Like he can't really help himself.
Well, he was trying to. He got caught because he penetrated some like edge servers, and he was trying to break into servers deeper into the network and deploying all sorts of crazy payloads and stuff like that. And it's like that's not.
Well, I don't think he did that. What he did is he rushed over to IRC seeking validation and started giving out the credentials for the shell that he had set up.
And then bad things happened.
And then some real people who knew what they were doing to actually try to steal stuff, they started installing all the malware and stealing secrets and stuff like that. He got into the Nintendo development server where all the test builds were for the games were on.
Oh yeah, Nintendo will take that very seriously.
Yeah. But he's going to be remanded to the custody of his parents again because he is severely autistic, and the judge said that he probably would not have a good time in prison. He would probably be victimized and probably raped and killed. So, should we give people, serial offenders, a break just because of that? I don't know. Probably in his case, maybe. LTE. Some of us are forced to, keep using it. Even 5G is outside of our reach. We don't even get 5G.
5G is not even real.
So
if you're AT&T,
we're stuck with it, and bad news for us, right?
Researchers find 36 new flaws in the LTE protocol. They actually found 51 vulnerabilities, but 36 were new. So that's not good. 36 flaws deliberately placed there by world governments in order to be able to control the protocol?
I think maybe 12 of them were deliberate. This was fuzzing, where you just cram as much weird data in as you can and watch what comes out the other side, and super effective.
See, stories like this. It's like we're always talking about Huawei and their equipment is dangerously insecure, and they left it insecure and blah, blah, blah. And then we have stories like this. Like, is literally every cell carrier, like security is not, it's not even an afterthought.
But this is presumably a standard, right? So no one entity could poison this on purpose without somebody else knowing.
It could be like encryption, where like the encryption standard is very well done, but the implementation is shoddy and crappy.
Speaking of shoddy implementation, here's a pro tip if you operate a gas station. When you install new pumps, they have these pins, the security for, like the software where you update the pumps. You should change the pins.
French gas stations have been robbed after forgetting to change the gas station pump pins. So the pumps have a little remote for doing things like maintenance, and it's like we're going to put it in fill mode where you put gas in instead of take gas out. Yeah, there's a pin number that prevents random people from being able to just do whatever they want. They didn't change it.
So if you have the right tool and you can buy them or build your own, then you can enter that pin and you can do things like change the price of gas to $0. Take away the limit of how much gas you could pump. So these guys were actually pretty organized. They would take a cargo van. I think they've got, I don't know, they don't have a picture of it. They'd take a cargo van and put a giant tank in the back and drill a hole and put a spout in there. And they would come up, set the price to $0, take the limit off, and pump the whole van full of gasoline and drive away. They didn't get caught doing that. They got caught because they were selling the gas online.
Come down to Joe's home napalm.
It was literally like that. Like, here, let's arrange a time and you pay us online, and then you come and you can fill up all your vehicles. Or you could buy, they would just have, jerry cans pre-filled. You can just come and pick them up. So they got busted. They got away with a lot of gasoline, though. And at those prices, at the French prices, that's a lot. Now, one thing you don't want to do is, if you're going to be a hacker, you don't want to go after casinos because they will become violent if you threaten their money.
Casino Screw Up Royale, a tale of ethical hacking gone awry. Now, when this was breaking, we reported on this, but we've been pretty quiet for the last few months because this is a story from like late last year. So there was this guy that figured out the hospitality system, or like the loyalty system in the hotel, was dangerously insecure. And it turned out that was because the casinos had farmed that out. And they tried to do a responsible disclosure, but maybe not. And then it just sort of gets weird from there.
Well, the hacker claims that they had worked out a price. Yeah. But the casino people,
with the journalist.
Yeah, the casino people say that never happened. So the casino people just kind of ghosted them after they fixed the problem. And then the hacker figured out they were going to a trade show because they were like, showing off their software and stuff at the trade show. And the hacker got in their face at the trade show. Violence occurred. No one knows who threw the first punch there. And it just got crazy after that.
Yeah.
Which is
a cautionary tale.
I guess if you're going to hunt bounties, bug bounties, the best rule is no physical confrontations. You got to watch out for
especially at security conferences.
Yeah. Bad idea. This is another story I really wish Krista were here because I love, and I think the audience enjoys her visceral reactions to things like this. And it really creeps her out, rightly so, when hidden camera stuff comes up.
Airbnb has a hidden camera problem. This is a story about one guy's experience with an Airbnb. Is like the guy's name was different than the guy that he'd been dealing with online. Was it the same person or not? He didn't know. He found hidden cameras with SD cards, so he took the SD cards and ran away. Airbnb, the company, put him up in a hotel for the night, but didn't really do much to the guy that was hosting the Airbnb. So this guy may file a lawsuit and some other stuff.
And he doesn't know the guy's real name or information. Of course, he doesn't know where he lives. And he's not allowed to contact the guy after. So Airbnb, they say that once they've given you your money back, you are no longer a part of it. You cannot do anything more to escalate that. You can't approach that guy. That would be totally illegal, and they would not support you in court or anything like that. But they also mention a bunch of other instances like this. And you definitely get the idea that Airbnb, although they're happy to give you your money back and buy you a hotel room and all that stuff, the last thing they want are news stories like this about hidden cameras in Airbnbs.
Yeah. It's an interesting story.
It is a horrible thing to do, though. I mean,
yeah,
I think probably some people just don't think it through. They're just stupid, and they're doing it as like an anti-theft, anti-vandalism type thing. But you can't. Now, they do have rules. You can put them in the living room, and external cameras in the house are fine. But anywhere there's a bathroom or a bed, you cannot put a camera. And this guy had him in the bedroom. Well, Huawei, we talked about Huawei, and this story is another great example of the idea that, yes, Huawei is security, their security has flaws, has problems, and the Chinese government may or may not be lurking in the background. But are they unique in something like this?
Well, Microsoft Windows 10 devices opened a full compromise from a Huawei PC driver. Microsoft new kernel sensors in Windows 10 version 1809 flagged a nasty bug in Huawei's PC Manager software. So this software basically created a service that would allow a limited privilege to call the service, which runs as the system user, and then could do anything on the system with administrator level privileges. The process didn't really do much in the way of validation. So an attacker could, for example, run their own process and just tell the Huawei driver, hey, this needs to run as administrator. And the Huawei driver would say, okay, yep, sounds good. And it would just do it.
But here's the thing. As you mentioned earlier, Asus had the exact same problem this week.
Yes.
Exact same problem. Now, do we immediately believe that the U.S. government is behind Asus's poorly designed software?
It was last year. AMD had the exact same problem with their RAID drivers for Windows, and I disclosed it, and that was here on Level 1. There's a video about that. And their process for managing RAID drivers runs as a system user and doesn't really validate stuff. And it was possible to, it was a web server, basically. You could basically use the web server to overwrite system files on the computer, and it was the exact same issue.
Sometimes you do good things and you get punished for it. And that maybe stings more than anything else. And as we embark on the nonsense section, that's what we find.
Verizon workers suspended after rescuing a stuck cat. So I looked at the video, and if this is a video of the worker actually rescuing the cat, then Verizon is full of crap, because that wire there, that's not a power wire. That's communications. So there was not really any danger of this guy doing anything. Verizon's like,
oh, a moment of panic, and here he comes. He's got it. Cat rescued.
ta-da!
So yeah, Verizon says listen, we don't use the cherry pickers to rescue random cats. That's not what they're for. You risk damage. You risk, knocking out power lines and stuff like that. So 3 weeks, no pay for this man.
There's no power lines on that pole, except for maybe the street light, which is only 110, and that's fine. I've been shocked by 110 countless times, and it's not even really dangerous.
People in the neighborhood are celebrating him, though, because he saved the cat. Now,
we can do a GoFundMe for his lost pay.
Here's the thing about cats, though. That cat probably could have come down anytime he felt like it.
Probably.
Yeah. Cats are just like that. So. But, it's a feel-good story. I think Verizon probably should have warned him
that a little better.
Yeah, they should have given him a warning.
Don't do that.
And made announcements like, no, that's actually not. We're kind of proud of him, but in the future we can't be doing this.
Verizon hideously evil. Who would have guessed? Lying through their teeth. Oh, he could have hit a power line. Yeah, he could have, but he looked at the pole and was like, "There's no power here. It's fine."
When you go to Alaska, things run a little differently. It's not connected to the mainland, and you can kind of get away with some stuff, and you can get away with some stuff that sounds really fun.
The Supreme Court has ruled that an Alaska man can hunt moose on a hovercraft. So this Parks and Recreation was like, hey, you can't hunt on a hovercraft in a Parks and Recreation zone. But the thing is, this is not public land, and that's what this court ruled.
I thought that was public land.
No, I said that because it's not public land, even though there's some kind of protection thing, it's fine. Well, okay, but the actual thing in the ruling is where he was not public land. Yeah. They agreed with Sturgeon that the whatever river is not public land and is thus exempt from the national regulations under the Alaska National Land Interest Act.
But this says
Well, I'm just telling you what it says.
He may use it on a public land.
4 sentences later. Because it's there's some kind of weird national park thing there.
It does seem a little unsportsmanlike to use the hovercraft. But a lot of people in Alaska, that's how they eat. You kill a moose, it's 3-4 months worth of food, if not more. So if he was eating them, seems fine. Yeah, go ahead. Do whatever you got to do.
If he's doing it for sport, though. If he's doing Carl's Alaska Adventures, where there's a family from the inner city in the Bronx that is hunting moose, that's not okay.
They have pigs, wild hogs that are nuisance animals, and you can hunt them any way you feel like. And some people do it from a helicopter, and that also looks like a lot of fun. There's another great story if Krista were here. I don't know a whole lot about VeggieTales, but I think she does because she deals with the church kids and all that business. And I'll read the headline.
VeggieTales is racist and dangerous for children, California students claim. Is it because every vegetable has different features?
Well, here's the thing. So they claim that there's a white supremacy angle here, but I assume these front ones are the main characters. So we've got red, green, and orange. Here's a little white girl, I guess. Wait, what is this? Is this a vegetable?
I don't know. Pretty sure it's a fruit in front.
I don't know. But anyway, somehow, not only are VeggieTales, because of the color of the vegetables, is racist, which I don't... what does green translate into? None of these colors. But also, because they are biblical, the Bible itself also inherently racist, according to these people. So you just can't win if you're doing VeggieTales.
Why is this I don't understand.
So if you got kids, not even once. If we want to get to the moon, back to the moon, I should say, we're going to have to engage all of the workforce, not just the men. I think. Do you agree?
Yeah.
We got to put these women to work, get them out there, spacewalking. But there's a problem.
NASA has canceled an all-female spacewalk, citing a lack of spacesuits in the right size. Lack of outerwear because the women dimensions were different.
Apparently, one woman trained in a large, but they've discovered the large was not good enough. She needed a medium. Maybe she lost some weight, and so they have canceled. Well, they didn't cancel it. That she's going to have to go out with a man.
Low Earth orbit problems.
Patriarchy wins again. It would suck if because I imagine astronaut training pretty grueling, and you have to, go through all the school and learn everything. And it's your big day. You're ready, but they don't have a suit that fits you.
I was going to be an astronaut, but then the patriarchy denied me my suit.
You got to explain that to your friends. It's like, oh my God, did you spacewalk while you're up there? Well, I was supposed to. In the history of great travel slogans, I think this one is probably top 10. Fantastic idea.
Air Asia apologizes, drops "Get off in Thailand" promotion.
You see, Thailand's famous for sex tourism.
We're not 12 here at all.
They did apologize. Now, one maybe dark part of this, one negative, is that famous for sex tourism, also underage sex tourism.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah,
Can't laugh at that.
Getting off in Thailand on children would be a real negative. So they're going to change it, but whoever came up with it, it was clever, right? They probably weren't thinking about the children.
They were not thinking about it.
Let's hope they weren't.
That was one of those things that just translates really poorly.
We talk about cyclists a lot on the Level 1 news because it comes up in a lot of these hipster communities, and and I always say bad things about them because they're super annoying. I mean, they are just. First of all, they're on the sidewalks, which is illegal. No one seems to care, and they're clogging up traffic. And
they can come out of nowhere unexpectedly.
The other thing is they feel very entitled, and they seem to bitch a lot.
Experts want the word cyclist banned because it dehumanizes them.
What kind of expert is worried about this problem?
A cyclist.
I guess. So I think they want to be called like bicycle humans or bicycle riders or something like that. And I don't understand the difference. Do you?
No.
How does it? It's not completely human. What is the word driver? I mean, we have self-driving cars. Robots can drive.
Can we get a self-driving bicycle?
I'm sure that exists.
That may have to be a tricycle, though, I guess.
No, I've seen little toys that can balance.
What if we have like the Segway technology for the balancing, and it's also self-driving? That would be an amazing bicycle.
That would add a lot of weight to the bicycle. You'd really be cranking your legs to get that thing moving.
What separates a bicycle from a motorcycle at that point?
Oh, actually, the phrase they want to use is people who ride bikes. You're going to 4 words to replace cyclist? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I'm on board with getting rid of cyclists if we also replaced motorists with people who ride cars.
Drive cars. But you have people who can ride cars and people who can drive cars. So we have to...
Yes, we will have to use all of those words every time we want to talk about those things.
I thought this story was great just because this woman went her whole life without realizing that she was different.
Scientists find a genetic mutation that makes a woman feel no pain. Well, it's actually more interesting than that. It's not that she feels no pain. It's just that her sense of pain is greatly diminished, which is actually much more rare than not feeling any pain at all. Not feeling any pain is not super uncommon, but people will those people will chew up their tongues and do lots of crazy stuff.
There's
like
a disease that can cause that.
She doesn't have that. She can feel pain. It's just dramatically reduced.
Just minor discomfort, but not just physical pain. She doesn't seem to experience any emotional unhappiness or anything of that nature. And she's like, well, I've always been happy-go-lucky and things didn't really bother me, even like deaths, but I never thought I was different, until...
She's also forgetful, apparently.
But she's an older gal, 71, and at 69, her body just started falling apart. She had severe carpal tunnel syndrome. Her hips had basically disintegrated. And when pain that would have probably killed normal people got her to be like, you know what, I think I'm going to ask my doctor about this. They were like, we must do 5 surgeries in the next week. They have to happen now, or your bones are going to turn to dust. And then after the surgeries, she didn't even do any kind of opiates or anything.
She also healed really quickly, apparently. So apparently not being able to feel pain also means that scar tissue does not develop the way that it normally does. And she healed differently than she would have otherwise.
It's funny because she could literally have been a superhero.
Yeah.
But she just went through a mundane life and didn't do anything. It This is Wolverine if he never got discovered by the X-Men.
It's they did refer her to genetic testing, and they figured out that what genes two previously unknown. One was kind of known, and then one was unknown. Of her genes were manipulated in a certain way. One of the genes was like cut off at the front, and the other one was something else. And so they're going to look at using that mutation to help certain other kinds of people.
Oh, CRISPR babies.
Well, no, I think they can do it. They can suppress whatever it was through drugs. They had no idea that particular gene would affect all those things.
No HIV and minus pain gene edit. That's what I want my kids to have. Never having kids. This is another story that, again, I wanted Krista to be here because she's such a big mushroom enthusiast. And I was going to set her up because I know she wasn't going to read the story ahead of time. And I was going to set her up and be like, Krista, you love, fungus and mushrooms, right? And she's going to be like, yeah. And then I was going to be like, oh, because you want frogs to die.
Nearly 100 species of frogs, toads, and salamanders are wiped out by fungus.
Look at this poor guy. He looks miserable.
So this apparently, frogs and toads and that kind of thing in like South Asia are immune to this. But this fungus has spread all over the world. And most of these reptiles and amphibians are not immune to this, other than outside of Southeast Asia.
They've developed the immunity after years of being assaulted by this fungus.
Yeah.
So yeah, they blame people taking, the reptiles over borders when they shouldn't. That's why you don't do that. That's why Australia is real serious about that. Because who was the celebrity?
Oh yeah,
I think it was all their stuff. Was it Johnny Depp?
Yeah, he brought his dogs or something.
Brought his dogs, and they locked him right up. And they're like, nope. We're keeping these dogs now.
There's a lot of deadly things in Australia looking to get out.
Yeah, but it's such a weird ecosystem that I can see bringing anything in there is gonna tip it over. Also, we got those fish that are moving their way north. That's like just nuisance fish, but they can outbreed and out-eat every other fish in our waterways. So
that's probably bad.
Got to be careful when you take animals to certain places. We mentioned, of course, it's over now. You've already experienced all the April foolery that has happened. But one place that you didn't see it was Microsoft.
Microsoft leads the way in banning April Fool's Day pranks. So there was a memo issued by the CEO, and he's like, hey, these usually backfire. They're not funny. Let's just not do this.
It's rare that you get a good one. And after the first one gets you, it's usually just a news story or something, and you're like, wait, what? Oh, yeah. And then for the rest of the day, you just discount everything you see.
Yeah.
So,
well, like I can imagine a riot at Microsoft where it's like we're doing away with the Mrs. Fields cookie machines. Then it's just like a riot. Everybody freaks out, and they just it turns bad fast. And it's like, no one's getting rid of the cookie machines. It's April Fool's. And then you can't calm down quickly. You're just amped up. You've got the baseball bat ready to smash things because they've taken away your hot, delicious, fresh chocolate chip cookies.
Also, the April Fool's stuff, I feel, is less useful than ever because more and more of the headlines that we see would qualify, except they're real. Like a headline that says, we're going to build a useless wall between two countries, or we're going to get rid of fossil fuels and rebuild every building in the country.
Russian company Kaspersky is going to help Asus with their security problems.
Yeah, so you don't need April Fools. It's like daylight savings time. We don't need it in the modern world because everything is insane. So I agree with Microsoft on this one. Somebody I just recently caught up. Are you familiar with Notch's Twitter escapades?
No.
He is, I'd say he and I are kindred spirits in the fact that we won't kowtow to the modern political correctness. But he has a much larger audience than I do. And a lot of his audience are young people who love Minecraft. And they are very much, new age and have different feelings about it. And so that might be the catalyst for this.
Minecraft creator Marcus Notch has been eradicated from the splash text. Both the Java and the console versions of the game have been updated, and this is the first time they've been updated in forever. There are other updates to the game other than his removal, but
they've changed it pretty dramatically, actually.
Yeah,
they've been changing Minecraft. I looked at all the new stuff. It's amazing all the new stuff they put in Minecraft. But they've always left him in there, even though they bought it from him. He's not part of it anymore.
Well, it's been long enough.
Yeah, I don't think it was about that. I think he said some things on, especially related to gender and that kind of thing.
I think I did follow him on Twitter a long time ago because he seemed kind of unhappy. Like he had, all the wealth from the purchase and he bought a really nice house. I think he bought like the house that's in like the Iron Man movie where it's just like the house on the rock.
Yeah, it was hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, it was something crazy. And he was like, I don't really know what to do now because what more is there? And it was like, this is sad.
Yeah. And I think he also lamented the crazy fandom of Minecraft sometimes too.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just want to like unplug, decompress, and just work on a pet project and not have anybody bother you.
Well, who's stopping him?
Well,
he could literally live in a bunker.
But you don't want to.
Well, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You know what? He's like my cats.
I want to be in there. No, I want to be in here.
Yeah. I want to be in here, but I want you to follow me and watch me while I play with the laundry basket. Don't interrupt me, but you need to be in the room.
My mom's cat was so upset with it that I put it in the pet carrier thing so we could do the stuff that, it didn't have any food the night before because we knew it was going to have to go in the pet carrier and deal with all that. And then we did all the stuff. And so it was only like a day. It was in the pet carrier for like 5 or 6 hours. And at the end of it, it's like, okay, we'll let you out. I know you got to be hungry. Here, I'll give you some food. It was so pissed off, it literally would not eat the food that I put out for it. I was like, here, I'll give you some food. Mom gave it another can of food of the exact same kind of food in a different dish, and it ate it. And it still has not touched my food. That's vindictive.
Yeah, they can be very contrary. For sure. Yeah, that's why I love cats, but I just wish they wouldn't be so loud about it. 3 of the qualities that I consider to be the worst human qualities: being loud for no reason, talking too much, and seeking attention. I got cats that embody that. And it's my curse for making fun of Rue for being retarded. But I could have gone with dogs. And what if I wanted to get a very specific dog? Not a specific breed of dog. An actual dog that already exists. Well, in China, that's no problem.
Across China, the clone police dog starts training. So why would you want to clone a police dog? Well, it turns out that if you have a police dog that's really good, you don't want to take it out of service so that it can get pregnant and have a puppy.
This one was female.
Yeah, so you can just clone it. And so it doesn't make it any faster. It's not like saying that it's cloning the training of the dog. It's just that the genetic qualities of the dog make it a really good police dog. So they're just going to clone it, and by cloning it, they don't have to worry about the other dog getting all weird and hormonal and stuff.
I think they also, when they do police dogs, they take a whole class of police dogs, and only a certain amount actually can be police dogs. Some of them are actually just too friendly.
Yeah.
And so with this one, they're fairly confident it's trainable in the same way, because this is basically a super dog.
Yeah.
As far as police work goes. So interesting that China, after the little CRISPR debacle, they want to still work in the cloning industry.
Yeah.
I think they're going to use that Australian woman and we're going to get super babies, and that may or may not turn out good. I don't know.
Whee!
We continue to talk about the Christchurch shooting, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think this is a bad thing when we start using it to just say that people should be silenced.
Washington Post says that 8chan looks like a terrorist recruiting site after the New Zealand shooting, so should the government treat it like one? This is just a bunch of people that have very bad taste, but I don't think that any of those people are actively looking to become terrorists.
Well, they do point out some posts that people are saying, oh my God, I want to do this now, or he's a hero, or whatever. But here's the problem. I'm sure that if you look at the entirety of 8chan, the number of like anime girl posts and Pepe's and just utter nonsense. Actually, this is a meme. I don't know if you've seen it, but they'll put a headline like this, and then they'll pick just the stupidest 8chan post that they can find and paste it underneath it. That has nothing to do with anything. It's just absolute, just stupidity. that's got to be a small portion of what's on 8chan. And so you shut down a thing because...
Well, it's also the type of site that somebody would post that just to get the other users riled up.
Exactly. And the shooter himself was trolling in all of his literature.
Yeah.
And no one seems to understand that. No one seems to say, hey, he did this to stir us up and try to get us to do things like this, and now we're doing things like this.
Well, the reaction has been the only way to prevent people from getting stirred up is to just hide all of the information preemptively because people are dumb.
Right.
And it's like on the one hand, I do believe that people are dumb and will get riled up about stuff, but on the other hand, you got to give the people that aren't that dumb the right to choose. Not really the right to choose, but like the right to decide for themselves, I guess.
Yeah, and if they decide to do something terrible, they have to be allowed to make their own decisions up until the point that they do that.
Yeah.
And posting on a message board is not illegal.
Anything else? I mean, literature has shown us that any other alternative ends much badly.
Not literature, history. I include this story only because it's about my beloved Nestle, and so many people are against it.
Nestle is going to face a lawsuit saying that Poland spring water is not from a spring.
It is true, a dark truth, that Nestle does in fact use common tap water to fill its bottles. But it's the purification process and the minerals, as we have already covered, that make it unique.
There are a lot of people in the audience that are aware that, I mean, is it off camera? I can't tell. Is it?
Probably.
This is the Nestle Pure Life, though. This is not Poland Spring.
Yeah, I think Poland Spring's actually a little bit more expensive, isn't it?
I don't know. Reverse osmosis. That just means they put the filter in backwards.
I think it's a little more complicated than that. But yeah, they just take common trash water and pull all the crap, literally everything out of it. Reverse osmosis. Actually, here's a fun science fact. You wouldn't want to drink water that was just pure, straight water. That's actually not good for you. So they make it pure water, and they put some minerals and crap back in it and make it taste good.
Unlike Dasani, where they add salt.
Yeah, sodium. And then they sell it back to you. And did anybody really think it was coming from a beautiful spring that's on the bottle?
Yes, apparently. Or maybe not, because lawsuit.
Well, if you feel this way about Poland Spring, just downgrade to Pure Life because it's the same stuff. I mean, this is like it's like Apple pricing. That goes up. They don't really give you anything better for you for the better price. And finally, let's talk about security and what are we going to do to secure under the sea? Who do we employ?
Grouper. Groupon. Military tries out fish as underwater spies. The sophisticated sensing behaviors of marine organisms could serve as surveillance. Yeah, so Grouper, whenever there's something different about their environment than it was, they will make a certain type of auditory sound that is easily detectable by sensors. So you could just deploy a bunch of Grouper somewhere, and if you've got a spy submarine or divers or something, they're going to make a different sound.
They also bring up that there could be even something as simple as plankton that in the presence of some sort of radioactive waste or even metal, they would change somehow. Something would be different. If you could detect that, then you could detect that there's a submarine in the area or something else. They don't really have a plan on exactly how this works. They're just thinking, hey, fish are in the water, right? Fish react to things. Why don't we just study the fish to figure out what's going on under the water?
What could go wrong?
But what if the fish react to the sensor and poison the reaction?
I'm just remembering the time that we trained dolphins to deliver explosives to blow up enemy subs.
This is a little more benign than that.
Yeah.
But, okay, what if it's an arms race? So we do this with the grouper. The Russians find out about it, and they build a toxin that only affects grouper, and then we wipe out the world's grouper supply.
We've seen how this game ends. The ultimate killing machine is sharks with lasers on their head.
How about CRISPR sharks with the 71-year-old woman anti-pain gene?
Sharks that can no longer feel pain would be unstoppable killing machines.
Laser sharks who cannot feel pain and who are reporting home through sensors of what they detect. And go ahead and put explosives on them too.
We need to get a patent attorney like Stat.
We might need a geneticist to translate that human gene over into the shark world, but that'll be fun work. It might not be super effective at first, but it'll be fun. You know, it's like all the little baby sharks, and we're torturing them to try to figure out if they can feel it.
I'm not a biologist, but there are a couple instances where different species have evolved the same gene for things independently, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Record time this week, which is funny because Chris is not even here. Maybe Krista is a factor that controls the length of the show, and without her, we just spin out of control.
I think she gives us cues that we need to move on because she's sitting over here and she's just like.
She does give some great facial expressions. But I don't know. We don't know where she is.
We'll see you next week.
She's missing. Come by next week to find out the mystery of where was Krista.